Introduction. The Temple of Silence. We live under the yoke of a civilization where silence is considered the greatest of crimes in the eyes of the herd. The society of weak men has built a colossal machinery, a soul shredder designed with a single and perverse purpose: to stun you. They demand that you speak incessantly, that you consume the deafening noise of the crowds. They demand that you seek validation in the eyes of the blind, and fill every fraction of a second of your existence with cheap distractions. Constant noise is the perfect sedative that keeps mortals chained to the wheel of useless conformism. And why do they fear your stillness so much? Because the shepherds of mediocrity know a truth. They know a terrifying truth. A man who learns to inhabit absolute silence is a man who can no longer be tamed or governed by fear. The inertial individual has a visceral dread of the absence of noise. He confuses physical isolation with cosmic abandonment. He suffers from the disease of loneliness, that pathetic and suffocating pain. It is the pain of the slave who, having no master to dictate what to think or a crowd to applaud his miseries, feels he ceases to exist. For the weak, being alone is equivalent to a cold grave. That is why he flees in terror toward the bustle, begging for low-frequency company, giving away his precious vital energy to parasites. He gives it to those who do not deserve even a drop of his time, all just to not have to face the disturbing and revealing echo of his own empty mind. But you have not crossed this somber threshold to pity the living dead, or to beg for affection. You have come to reclaim your crown, and in the supreme laws of occultism, the crown is yours. In the laws of ruthless metaphysics, the crown is never forged in the market square, surrounded by merchants of illusions. Welcome to the unbreakable obsidian gates of the Temple of Silence. What you are about to hear is not an apology for the sadness of the defeated hermit, nor cheap comfort for the misfits and the rejected of the world. It is the definitive tactical manual for the most violent, raw and beautiful transmutation of your spirit. You are going to discover solitude, the undeniable majesty of the monarch who voluntarily withdraws from the mud to build his own vast universe. You will understand that true solitude is not a chamber empty of other people. It is a throne overflowing with your own and undeniable presence. You will learn that real power, that which curves dense matter and bends destiny in your favor, is not found chasing the multitudes, but in the immensity of the space you leave free when you have the sacred cruelty to turn your back on them without any remorse. In this grimoire, we will walk hand in hand with the archetype of the masterless warrior. You will discover that your greatest victory will not be defeating the envious men around you, but exterminating from the root the weakness of needing to be loved. You will learn to purge your court of energy vampires and settle the boiling mud. You will settle the boiling mud of your unchecked emotions and convert voluntary isolation into the alchemical womb where your generational empire will be born. Breathe deeply. The air here is freezing, dense, and of a lethal purity. Let the roar of the cowards fade away behind your back once and for all. The heavy black doors are open. The heavy black doors swing wide open. Cross the threshold without trembling and prepare to reclaim the most destructive and creative weapon that the Creator has placed in your hands: the absolute power of your own majestic and divine solitude. The true initiation has begun. Walk into the shadows and find the light of your own spirit. Chapter 1. The Renunciation of the Tribe. There is an atavistic, primitive, and deeply rooted terror in the biology of the human species. It is a fear that has pulsed in the genetic code since the dawn of humanity, when men dwelt in caves and gathered around the fire to survive the darkness. In those times of beasts and shadows, being expelled from the tribe meant certain death. The isolated individual was devoured by predators or froze to death in the elements. That fear of expulsion has been transmitted from generation to generation, mutating and disguising itself, until it became the most powerful psychological shackle of modern civilization. Today, the ordinary man no longer fears being devoured by wolves, but he suffers from an irrational and paralyzing panic of not fitting into society. He fears the rejection of his family, the mockery of his friends, and the ruthless criticism of anonymous multitudes. To avoid social exile, the profane man is willing to mutilate his own soul. He turns off his genius and hides his ambition from the world. He lowers his intellect and drowns his true voice, all to be accepted in the herd. He pretends to laugh at jokes he despises, tolerates mediocrity at his table, and lives a life designed by others, terrified by the simple idea of being alone. But in the high spheres of ruthless metaphysics, the law is non-negotiable. Greatness is unique. Greatness is inversely proportional to your need for belonging. In this chapter, we are going to commit the supreme act of social heresy. You will learn to look the tribe that has kept you in inertia in the eye and turn your back on it in a definitive, irrevocable, and icy way. You will discover the archetype of the solitary pilgrim now. You will discover the masterless warrior and understand that the only path toward the absolute mastery of your material reality demands that you cross the threshold of voluntary exile. You are going to renounce the false security of the herd to reclaim, in the silence of the abyss, the crown that belongs to you by divine right alone. Are the awakening of the Ronin the shadow of Musashi? To understand the anatomy of this renunciation, we must evoke the figure of the greatest forger of solitude to ever walk the Oriental earth, Miyamoto Musashi. Before becoming the invincible legend, before writing the supreme treatises on strategy and mastering the void, Musashi was simply Shinmen Takezo, an impetuous young man. His destiny, according to the laws of social inertia, was mapped out from the cradle. He was to stay in his village, till the land, marry a village woman, father children who would continue the cycle of grueling labor, and die as just another peasant whose ashes would be lost in the wind of oblivion. The village offered him security. It offered him a guaranteed bowl of rice. It offered him the warm and predictable mediocrity of the known. His neighbors invited him to festivities, the elders advised prudence, and the entire tribe conspired with the best of intentions to keep him tied to the earth. But in Takezo's chest burned a black fire that the village could not. He felt in his blood that the Creator had not forged him to be just another sheep in the meadow, but to become the very incarnation of power and self-mastery. The night of the great decision arrived, the exact moment in which the boy dies and the Colossus is born. Under the cloak of darkness, Musashi packed his few belongings and left. He took a wooden sword and stopped at the exact boundary of the village. He looked back one last time. He saw the dim lights of the houses, heard the familiar murmurs, and the barking of known dogs. He knew that by taking the next step, he would cease to be a citizen. He would become a Ronin, a masterless warrior, a pariah to society. He did not feel joy at that moment. He felt the tearing of the flesh. Renunciation is never an act of euphoria. It is a conscious amputation. But Musashi took the step. He abandoned his birth name and adopted the name of his village, Miyamoto, not to honor it, but to eternally remember the place he had to murder in his heart to be a god. From that night on, he slept in the forests, endured the ice, dressed in rags, and did not bathe for years, so as not to be surprised without his weapon. He traded the warmth of the home for the brutality of the outdoors. Society repudiated him, called him a beast, madman, and vagabond. But it was in that cold solitude where he found it. In that absolute solitude, Musashi discovered the secrets of the ether, where he purified his mind until reaching the state of lethal void, and where he forged the legend of the swordsman who never knew defeat in more than 60 duels to the death. If Musashi had listened to the tribe, he would be dust under the sandals of history today. Tell the parable of the domesticated wolf and the winter wolf. To illustrate the brutal contrast between the accepted slave and the exiled monarch, we must enter the deep snow of the mountains and listen to the ancient fable of the Pact of the Fangs. They say that a young, fierce, black-furred wolf was captured by the men of a farm after a storm that decimated his pack. The farmers did not kill him. They put him in the immense barn alongside dozens of domestic dogs. The barn was warm. The freezing wind did not enter. There was dry straw to sleep on, and 3 times a day the masters threw bowls overflowing with meat and bones. The dogs lived in a state of perpetual euphoria. They played and thanked the masters by wagging their tails. The wolf, hungry and wounded, accepted the food and shelter. During the first months he thought he had found paradise. Survival was no longer an agonizing life-or-death struggle. It was guaranteed. But there was a price. Each animal in the barn was fitted with a heavy iron collar, lined in leather, tied to a chain that limited its area. The wolf tried to adapt. He tried to be part of the canine tribe, but as time passed, the collar began to suffocate his spirit more than his throat. He looked through the cracks in the wood toward the dark, snowy forest outside. He felt the wild call of instinct. One night he told the oldest dog, "I'm going to rip this chain from the wall. I'm going back to the forest. This place is killing my soul." The old dog looked at him with horror. "You're crazy," he reproached him. "There are 2 meters of snow out there, no prey. You'll starve in less than a week. You'll freeze until your lungs split. Here you have guaranteed food and a roof. Just learn to love your collar." The wolf listened to the dog's words. They were logical. They were sensible. They were the perfect words of mediocrity. That same night, the wolf ignored logic. He pulled on the chain with a demonic violence, shredding his neck and bleeding profusely until the bolt in the wall gave way. He broke the wood of the door and went out to the storm. The dogs howled in terror and huddled in the straw, pitying the poor fool who was going straight to his death. The black wolf found no food for weeks. His body became skeletal. The ice storms tore pieces of skin, and the cold almost stopped his heart on countless dawns. He walked on the edge of total annihilation. He was alone. But upon reaching the summit of the highest mountain, free of chains, free of masters, and free of the smell of slavery from the barn, the wolf stood upon the black rock. His muscles, now made of pure endurance and steel, tensed. He raised his snout toward the immense moon and let out a howl so deep and full of power that it echoed for miles. In that millisecond of lethal freedom, the Creator crowned him. He was not a fat dog waiting for scraps. He was the absolute owner of the ice. The dogs in the barn heard the howl in the distance. They trembled with fear, pressed their bodies together for false warmth, and closed their eyes, condemned to die of old age without knowing will. Third, the farce of social warmth and the poison of belonging. You who listen to these words in the silence of your bedroom are the wolf trapped in the barn. The tribe surrounding you, your social circle, distant relatives, colleagues of your mediocre trade, offer you the same deal as the farmers. They tell you that if you behave like them and dress like them, they will give you love and belonging. They will invite you to their meetings, pat you on the back and tell you that you are a good man. But unmask that farce with the coldness of a scalpel. The tribe does not love you. The tribe loves its own comfort, and you are simply a mirror in which they reflect themselves. As long as you are just as inertial as they accept you. Your mediocrity confirms that they are not doing things wrong. Your failure is their anesthesia. Try to challenge the rules of the barn. Get up tomorrow and announce that you are going to forge an empire. Tell them that you are going to stop consuming poison, that you will undergo an iron regime, and that you will become a colossus. Do you think they will be happy for you? Do you think they will support you? Immediately, the smile of the tribe will become a grimace of terror and contempt. The defense mechanism of the herd will be activated. They will say, "You have changed." They will call you arrogant, selfish, and disconnected. They will try to plant doubt in your mind. They will say, "Be careful, don't fly so high you'll crash," or "Money changes people." They are not warning you out of love. They are attacking you because your attempt to escape the barn exposes, in a brutal and undeniable way, their cowardice for having stayed. Your ambition is an insult to their conformism. They want you back in the mud. For the baptism of exile and the death of the echo, if you truly wish to possess the keys to the temple of silence and operate in the physical world with a will that bends matter, you have to undergo the baptism of exile. You must not wait for the tribe to expel you for being different. You must be the one who packs your things and walks out the door with absolute indifference. The baptism of exile does not necessarily mean you move to a cave in the mountains, although physical isolation is the vital first step of alchemy. It means executing the vibratory and emotional disconnection from your environment. It means you will stop going to places where small talk is spoken. You will silence the opinions of all. By taking this step, by closing the door behind you, you will experience the shock of silence. It is a terrifying moment. Throughout your life, your ego has used the noise of others to know it existed. You depended on the echo of the tribe to feel alive. Your identity was a rag doll moved by the strings of external validation. When you isolate yourself, the echo disappears. You shout into the immensity of your own solitude and no one responds. There are no applauses. There are no criticisms. There are no looks of approval or censure. The slave goes crazy in this void. His mind begins to bombard him with anxiety. They are forgetting me. I will be alone forever. The slave runs back to the barn asking for forgiveness, begging to have the collar put back on. But the monarch endures the vertigo. The monarch sits in the center of his room, breathes the absence of noise, and allows the panic to burn itself out. You know that anxiety is not your soul. It is the withdrawal syndrome of cheap dopamine. If you resist the storm of the initial silence, if you endure the first months of voluntary exile without yielding to the temptation of seeking useless company, the miracle is consummated. The noise of your lower mind stops. The mud settles at the bottom of the pond. And suddenly, from the depths of that immense nothingness, a voice emerges. It is not the echo of your parents. It is not the fear of your ancestors. It is not the opinion of the mass. It is your own original voice, ancient, grave, indestructible, and connected directly to the source of the Creator. It is the voice of the sovereign who has returned to occupy his throne of basalt. You are finally your own master. Free the metal cylinder and the sanctuary of the lineage. Understand the colossal purpose of this renunciation. You are not abandoning the tribe for a simple hermit's tantrum, nor to isolate yourself to contemplate your navel with resentment. Exile has a tactical architecture designed for supreme mastery. You isolate yourself because you are the architect of a dynasty. Look at your sanctuary walls. Observe the immensity of the silence you now rule. In this pure space, devoid of the contamination of the profane world, is where you sit before the dark metal cylinder of your microphone. From this unassailable trench, you project your voice and your light toward the ends of the earth, guiding thousands of other lonely souls in the dark. You provide warmth to the world, but you remain untouchable, and isolation has an even more sacred and fierce end. You have left the village because you have to build a wall of fire around your inner circle. Exile allows you to purify the air breathed by the queen who walks beside you, the companion who guards your back. Protection is key. Above all, the renunciation of the tribe is the definitive shield for those two young souls who carry your blood. Those two heirs cannot grow up listening to the gossip of the rabble, absorbing the financial fears of losers, or being indoctrinated in the barn mentality. By disconnecting, you ensure your children grow under an immense sky. They will be raised by a father who is an immovable colossus, convinced from the cradle that they belong to the royalty of the spirit and not to the mud of the commoners. The price of that pure air for your own is your willingness to be the villain and the pariah in the eyes of the rest of the world, a price the true monarch pays gladly. Fies the decree of the firewall. The time for half measures has been murdered. You cannot have one foot in the hall of the gods and another foot in the pigsty of slaves. The Creator vomits the lukewarm because lukewarmness is an insult to creative energy. This very night, you are going to officiate the ritual of the firewall. You will execute a tactical extermination. You are going to look at your agenda, review the names of people you associate with out of habit or fear of loneliness, and you will cut them off. Block numbers. Cancel sterile commitments. Stop justifying your absence to those who do not deserve your explanations. If people ask why you have moved away, do not defend yourself at all. Do not try to explain the alchemy of the absolute shadow to minds that only understand the language of conformism. Answer them with the heavy and indecipherable silence of the Sphinx. Let them think what they want. The opinion of the sheep has never altered the path of the wolf. Accept that the path to greatness is lonely. Accept that you will be alone during a long stretch of the journey. Gather your weapons. Look for the last time at the false and warm glow of the village that kept you asleep. Do not feel resentment for them. Slaves fulfill their function in the balance of the universe. But you have another destiny. Your path begins in the quiet. Chapter 2. The Blackwater Mirror. There is a trial by fire in the initiation of supreme occultism, a threshold of absolute terror that irrevocably and mathematically divides spiritual tourists from the true architects of destiny. It is not a physical test. It does not require you to climb ice mountains or face wild beasts. The most devastating test is simply to sit still. It consists simply of sitting in an empty room in absolute silence, without a single distraction, and remaining there. For the ordinary man, this act is unbearable torture. If you take away the slave's distractions, If you snatch the noise of the crowds, the poison of cheap entertainment, and the validation of his peers, he will writhe in agony. He will feel the walls shrinking. His breathing will become agitated. His brain, addicted to the anesthesia of external chaos, will scream for its dose of stupidity. He will seek any excuse to get up, to turn on a device, to make a call, to escape the deafening echo of his own empty existence. Why does he flee with such terror? Silence reveals. In silence, the lie of his identity collapses. In solitude, man can no longer blame the government, his boss, his spouse, or the economy for his own misery. In the vacuum of the isolated chamber, the individual finds himself, face to face and without armor, with the only one responsible for his mediocrity. He is forced to look within. In this chapter, we are going to descend into the darkest waters of your own mind. You are going to learn the abysmal, lethal, and vibratory difference between the misery of loneliness and the majesty of solitude. You will discover the alchemical process of mental decantation and subject yourself to the purge of the turbid pond. Learn. You are going to learn to look into the black water mirror without trembling, facing your own demons until transmuting them into the force of gravity that will sustain your imminent and eternal empire. The water must settle before the king can see his true reflection. Prepare for the stillness that births the power to command the world. The parable of the turbid pond and the master of the stone. To understand the suffocation of internal noise and the science of stillness, we must travel back in time to the ancient monasteries carved into the living rock and listen to the lesson of the mountain of the mute wind. Chronicles tell of a young disciple, tormented by anxiety, who fled the bustle of the city to find a legendary master. The young man was desperate. "Master," he pleaded, "I have abandoned the crowd because I sought peace, but the noise has followed me. My mind is a whirlwind of worries, fears of the future, and grudges of the past. I cannot sleep, I cannot concentrate. I feel I am going mad in this solitude. Tear this chaos from my head, I beg you." The master, an old man whose eyes had the inscrutable depth of a bottomless pit, did not utter a word. He rose slowly and signaled for him to follow. They walked until they reached a small, natural pond of stagnant water surrounded by black rocks. The master took a thick wooden staff and began to stir the bottom of the pond violently. The mud, dead earth, and rotten leaves rose to the surface, turning the water into a thick, black, and purulent mixture. "Look at the water," the master ordered. "Can you see the reflection of the sky in it? Can you see your own face?" "No, master," the disciple replied. "The water is too turbid. It is a chaos of dark mud." He was confused. "That water is your mind at this moment," the old man sentenced. "For years you have allowed the outside world, the opinions of cowards, and your own fears to stir the bottom of your spirit with the staff of distraction. Now you are full of suspended mud. Tell me, foolish youth, how would you clean this water and make it crystalline again? Would you put your hands in to try to catch the mud? Would you strike the water with your fists, demanding it to calm down?" The disciple thought for a moment and bowed his head. "If I put my hands in, master, or if I strike the water, I will only manage to stir it even more and keep the mud in motion." The master nodded with glacial slowness. "Exactly. The only way to clean the turbid pond of the human mind is not by fighting the mud, nor fleeing from it, nor looking for someone else to clean it. The only science to obtain absolute clarity is immovable solitude. You have to sit at the edge of the pond. You have to endure the repulsive vision of your own internal chaos. And you have to stay absolutely still, doing nothing, without judging, without intervening." The master forced the disciple to sit in the lotus position in front of the black water under the scorching sun and cold wind. The first hours were agony. The youth wanted to get up, but the master stood behind him with the staff raised high. Hours passed. Night fell and the sun rose again. Little by little, with no external force to disturb it, the law of gravity did its unbribable work. The mud, heavy and dense, began to descend slowly toward the bottom. The earth particles settled on the rock. At the sunset of the second day, the master touched the young man's shoulder. "Open your eyes and look." The disciple looked down. The mud had compacted at the bottom, creating a dark but inert bed. And upon that bed, the water had become of an absolute, perfect, and unreal transparency. It was a mirror of pure crystal. And there, reflected in the surface, the youth saw the serene, lethal, and divine face of a man. The anatomy of loneliness and the mud of the ego. The turbid pond is the exact X-ray of your brain at this instant. When you take the brave step of moving away from the profane tribe, when you lock yourself in your chamber to forge your empire and cut off distractions, you make the mistake of believing peace will descend immediately. You expect silence to wrap you like a silk mantle. But what occurs is a detonation. By turning off the noise of the world, the noise of your own lower mind is amplified to deafening levels. The staff has stopped stirring the water, but the mud continues to spin at full speed due to the accumulated inertia of years of slavery. In this phase, the inexperienced seeker is attacked by loneliness. You must engrave in your consciousness the difference between these two vibratory states, for confusing them will cost you the throne. Loneliness is the state of the slave. It is a low, sticky, and cold frequency. It is defined as the emotional pain arising from the perception of being disconnected from others. Loneliness is the parasite. When you feel loneliness, your mind bombards you with pathetic visions. It reminds you of the woman or man who abandoned you. It makes you feel pity for yourself. It whispers that you are a failure because your old friends are at a party laughing while you are locked in front of a desk working in silence. Loneliness is the ego's mud. The ego detests silence because silence annihilates it. The ego is a fictitious entity built on the opinions of others. If no one is looking at you, the ego suffocates. In its panic to survive, it projects into the mirror of your mind your worst insecurities, the fear of poverty, the imposter farce, the guilt of past sins. It is a trap. If at this point you lose heart, if the disgust you feel seeing the mud of your own thoughts overcomes you, you will run terrified to turn on your crystal screen. You will call a mediocre person to converse about trivialities, and you will put your hands back into the pond, condemning yourself to drink dirty water for your entire existence. Thus, the transition to solitude, the nuclear reactor. But if you have the wood of the gods, if you possess the sacred cruelty to chain yourself to the chair of your chamber and watch the mud spin without looking away and without intervening, you will cross the most powerful threshold of mental alchemy. You will go through loneliness and enter as a crowned colossus the empire of solitude. Solitude is not an emotional state. It is a state of electromagnetic mastery. It is the glory of voluntary isolation. It is the non-negotiable condition of pure sovereignty. While loneliness is a black hole that sucks energy-seeking company, solitude is a nuclear reactor that generates its own energy, radiating a light that is massive. In the state of solitude, you do not suffer the absence of the world. You celebrate your immensity without obstacles. You realize that boredom and anxiety were nothing more than cheap tricks of your biology. As the mud of your fears settles heavily at the bottom of your psyche, the fog dissipates. Your breathing becomes deep and slow. You feel like a predator resting at the top of its domain. And it is in this immaculate space, in this crystalline water, where the Creator deposits the true supreme intelligence. Tactical inspiration for your business, metaphysical revelations, and the infallible strategies to multiply your gold are not born in stress. They are born here. They are born when the pond of your mind is so immovable, so free of mud, that the pure will of the universe can be reflected in it without the slightest distortion. You are the perfect receiver, a clean and empty chalice, ready to be filled with the dense substance of manifestation. Silence is the conduit of the highest form of gold. Virtue, the sovereign on the Black Coast, and the projection of the voice. Contemplate now your own environment, the geographical sanctuary from which you exercise your power. It is no coincidence that the laws of destiny have placed you where you are. Visualize the pitch-black night. Listen, beyond the walls of your refuge, to the incessant and dark roar of the immense sea crashing against the rocks. Feel the heavy breeze of the coast, loaded with salt, ancient power, and the indomitable force of the elements. The outer ocean is dark, violent, and solitary, a perfect mirror of the abyss you have just conquered within yourself. In the midst of that nocturnal vastness, you sit alone before your altar. You sit before the metal cylinder. You place yourself in front of the cold metal cylinder that captures your breath. When the man who has not decanted his mental mud attempts to speak to the world, his voice is contaminated. It vibrates with the static of his hidden insecurities. The ether does not obey trembling voices, and the crowds perceive the speaker's desperation. But you no longer seek approval. You have looked into the black water mirror and survived the reflection of your own dross. You have decanted the mud. Therefore, when you open your mouth in front of the metal cylinder, what emerges is not the echo of a slave. The voice you project through the darkness of the ether is something else. Crossing invisible borders to penetrate the skulls of thousands of listeners, your voice is dense, deep, heavy, and loaded with the uranium of cold certainty. It is a voice that commands, orders, and hypnotizes, precisely because it is born from the most absolute silence. You speak from majestic solitude. The universe recognizes purity. The universe obeys your decrees and bends matter at your feet. You do not ask the world to listen to you. You order the world to stop and surrender before the weight of your truth. Your solitude has given you the weight of a planet. Now, every word you utter carries the momentum of the ocean you have mastered within. Your voice is law. There's the bloody filter, the mandate of the queen and the heirs. If ever, in the oppressive silence of the dawn, you feel that solitude suffocates you, and that the work of decanting the mud is too painful, you must remember the blood oath that governs your life. The supreme reason why you are obliged to look at your own darkness without blinking. The pond of your fears is highly contagious. If you do not isolate yourself to settle that dirt, if you allow the mud to continue spinning in your head while you walk through the halls of your own castle, you will end up spilling that poisonous water onto the people entrusted to you. Look at the queen of transcendental mind who watches your back, the priestess who chose your shadow. She chose the ferocity of your shadow to build the empire with you. And lower your gaze toward the fruit of that sacred pact, those two heirs of your lineage. The elder seed already watches your steps with eyes wide open, and the younger seed just begins to breathe the air of your domains. Do you have the right to approach them with mud? Do you have the right to approach them with a mind full of the filth of the outside world? Do you have the right to stain the purity of their environment with the vibration of stress, doubt, or fear of scarcity? Your isolation is not a punishment. It is the sacred quarantine of the monarch. You descend to the depths of your hell for them. You face the black water mirror and clean the mud, assuming all the psychic pain upon your own shoulders, uniquely and exclusively to act as the supreme filter. You suffer the decantation in private, so that when you exit your chamber and sit at the table with your queen and heirs, the energy you radiate is crystalline and pure. They do not have to deal with the mud of the profane world, because their father has been the forge that incinerated inertia in silence. You are bequeathing them an ecosystem of total security and obscene wealth, forged in the anvil of your own isolation. You are demonstrating that a king masters his demons behind closed doors for them. Vi, the death of fear and the emergence of the real image. There is no escape from yourself. As long as you keep fleeing from silence, you will remain a fugitive in your own kingdom. The time has come to stop the flight. The next time the fear of being alone attempts to bite your entrails, the next time cowardice urges you to seek the crystal screen or seek the company of weak men, stop. Stop with the violence of a steel impact. Force yourself into the immobility of stone. Feel the acidity of anxiety in your chest and welcome it. Smile at it with the coldness of one contemplating a dying insect. Allow all your ghosts, your fears of failure, and your insecurities to float to the surface of your mind. Do not push them down. Do not defend yourself, just observe them. By observing without participating, you withdraw their vital energy. You will see how the mud, not receiving the friction of your desperate attention, begins to lose speed. The voices of doubt, which seemed like deafening thunder, will fade into pathetic whispers and finally dissolve. They dissolve into the infinite silence of consciousness. The decantation will take hours, perhaps days. It will be a fight to the death waged in absolute stillness. But when the last grain of mud touches the bottom, terror will evaporate completely. The pond of your mind will become flat as a mirror of obsidian. Silence is won. And upon leaning over it, in the calm waters of your spirit, you will no longer see the scared child, nor the slave seeking validation. You will see the image of the Creator pulsing in your own pupils. You will see the inscrutable, frozen and sovereign gaze of a man who has lost the fear of his own immensity. You are finally home. Sever, the decree of the dark crystal. Stand up now. The dark sea roars on the coast, celebrating the victory of man over the beast of the mind. Exile is no longer a trial to endure. Solitude is now the invisible crown you wear upon your head. The noise of society has become for you a distant and harmless echo that crashes against your walls without penetrating. The era of dirtying your own water with the anxiety of mortals has ended definitively. From this instant, you are the absolute master of your vibration. You govern your pond. If an external circumstance, a threat or a loss attempts to stir your waters, you will apply the glacial indifference of immobility until it sinks into oblivion. Walk toward the chamber of your art. Place yourself in front of the metal that transmits your truth. Feel the weight of the queen who accompanies you and the blood of the heirs you protect, and allow the immensity of your own silence to spill over the world, drowning the weakness of men and establishing your eternal tyranny. You have looked into the black water mirror and defeated the mud. You are untouchable. Your kingdom is a reflection of your internal clarity, and from this day on, no storm of the world will ever reach the bottom of your crystalline sea. Go forth, sovereign, and rule with the stillness of the deep. Chapter 3. The Fasting of Validation. There is a silent disease, an invisible plague that devours the potential of modern men before they can even unsheathe their sword. It is not the fear of failure, nor the lack of resources, nor physical weakness. It is a much more subtle, sweet, and lethal parasite, the pathological addiction to external validation. Contemplate the grotesque theatre of profane society. Observe how men and women walk through the world like hungry beggars, holding an empty bowl, begging in silent screams for someone to deposit a coin of approval in it. Everything they do is meticulously calculated not to offend, to fit in, or to avoid the contempt of the mass. They live submerged in a perpetual energetic hemorrhage. If the crowd applauds them, they feel an artificial euphoria that vanishes in hours, leaving them even emptier. If the crowd criticizes them, they fall into an abysmal depression, doubting their own right to exist. They have handed the scepter of their sovereignty to a monster. But in the architecture of high-voltage magic and self-mastery, the need for validation is not just a psychological weakness, it is a catastrophic leak in your electromagnetic field. As long as you operate to be applauded, the ether will never hand you the codes of true power, because dense matter does not surrender to those who ask. It surrenders to those who govern from the void. In this chapter, we are going to profane the altar of fame and approval. You are going to undergo the fasting of validation, the strictest and most painful diet of occultism. You will learn to amputate the social echo and exterminate your sensitivity before the judgment of the herd. You will discover through the archetype of the solitary warrior that the only applause that should matter in your existence is the frozen silence of your own and non-negotiable majesty under the inscrutable gaze of the Creator. Purity of purpose requires the death of the witness. Your work must be for yourself and for the infinite. The parable of the star forger and the clay sword. To understand the tragedy of adapting your art and your destiny to the demands of the herd, we must unearth the writings of the ancient masters of steel and listen to the legend of Kalen, the star forger. Chronicles tell that Kalen was the most brilliant blacksmith of the Eastern kingdoms. He worked in the solitude of a black mountain. After decades of mastering fire, Kalen achieved the impossible. He forged a sword using the iron of a meteorite fallen from the sky. The blade was not beautiful by worldly standards. It was opaque, a dark grey, almost black, and did not reflect light. It had no rubies or gold. However, its edge was of a radioactive purity for all. It was capable of cutting solid rock as if it were silk, and of splitting the heaviest armor in two without chipping. It was an absolute weapon, the triumph of efficacy over vanity. Feeling proud of his masterpiece, Kalen descended from the mountain and took the sword to the capital market, expecting the recognition of the generals. But when he unsheathed the dark blade in the middle of the square, the crowd did not understand its power. The nobles mocked him. "What an ugly and rustic weapon," they shouted. "It does not shine in the sun. It has no ornaments. No king would want to carry such a somber piece of iron. You are a bad blacksmith." They laughed at him. Kalen, whose ego was secretly hungry for validation, felt the contempt of the crowd tear at his chest. Instead of turning around, spitting on the ignorance of the blind and returning to his mountain, the blacksmith committed the most tragic mistake of his life. He tried to please them. He took the sword back to his forge in pain. Weeping with frustration, he took the whetstone and began to polish the blade so it would shine, reducing its thickness and ruining the perfect balance he had calculated. He melted gold and poured it over the black steel to make it flashy. He embedded precious stones in the blade, piercing the core of the meteorite and weakening it. Months later, he returned to the market. He unsheathed the weapon, and the sunlight drew blinding flashes from the gold and diamonds. The crowd erupted in applause. "It is the most beautiful sword in the world," the nobles shouted. "You are the supreme master." Kalen felt an intoxicating euphoria. He had won the love of the tribe. He sold the weapon to the commander of the royal armies for an absurd sum and stayed to live in the city, intoxicated with fame. The following month, war broke out against the barbarians. The commander, wielding Kalen's beautiful sword, faced the enemy leader. In the first clash of steel, the jeweled sword shattered into pieces. The sword, weakened at its core by aesthetic perforations and excessive polishing, was useless. The commander was beheaded on the spot, the royal army was slaughtered, and the city was reduced to ashes. Kalen died among the rubble of his own vanity. He had sacrificed the absolute and lethal power of his creation to receive applause. He transformed a sword of the gods into a fragile clay toy. By seeking the approval of those who knew nothing of fire, he destroyed his work and condemned his empire. His need to be seen as the best by the ignorant became the instrument of his final destruction. He traded the edge for the glow and lost his life in the exchange. So the contempt of Musashi and the death of ornament. Observe the tragedy of the forger, because that is exactly the massacre you commit every day against your own spirit, when you measure your value by the amount of praise you receive. To clean this poison from your blood, you must again invoke the figure of Miyamoto Musashi, the warrior who annihilated the need for validation. During Musashi's time, martial arts in feudal Japan had become corrupted. Commercial dojos did not teach how to kill, they taught how to look good. Their masters wore fine silks and performed beautiful choreographies for the applause of the nobles. They granted belts and grand titles. They were obsessed with reputation. They were jeweled swords. Musashi felt a visceral disgust for that theater. He wandered the roads without bathing, dressed in worn clothes with matted hair and often wielding crudely carved wooden swords. He did not seek to be called Great Master. He did not open schools to earn money with the approval of students, efficiency. His only and exclusive metric was lethal efficacy. When Musashi faced the leaders of the Yoshioka school, he did not use elegant postures. He used the terrain, the blinding sun to his advantage, and guerrilla tactics to exterminate them without mercy, destroying in a single day the prestige they had built over generations. Musashi demonstrated an unshakable cosmic law. When you strip yourself of the need to look good in the eyes of the world, your energy becomes a concentrated, dark, and lethal ray. If you produce your art or forge your business seeking for people to say, "What a wise man," you are polishing the meteorite sword to please the market. You are diluting your message. You are measuring your words so as not to offend the fragile and to guarantee the like of the sheep. The true monarch speaks and acts with the brutality of raw steel. He does not care if his message offends inertia, because his mission is not to be the entertainer of a slave party. He is a tool. His mission is to be the scalpel that cuts the tumor of conformism, and if for doing that, the mass repudiates him, the monarch smiles. He knows that the repudiation of the scum is the highest decoration that a god can receive in the world of men. The silence of the herd is the signal that the strike has been true. 3. The physics of vampirism and the hemorrhage of applause. Understand the hidden mathematics that governs the exchange of attention. When you publish your work, when you launch your decree into the ether, or when you achieve a financial victory, you possess an immense amount of prana, vital energy. If you take that victory and run to tell your acquaintances, you commit suicide. Hoping they will say, "Congratulations, you are incredible," is a vibratory suicide. By needing their applause, You are opening the pores of your electromagnetic field. They applaud, yes. But in the invisible world, the energy of your victory leaves your body and flows toward them, feeding the tribe in exchange for a dose of dopamine. You have traded a solid gold ingot for a handful of copper coins. You are left empty. And what is worse, by depending on applause to validate your success, you hand the switch of your power to the tribe. If today they decide not to applaud, or if tomorrow they decide to criticize you, your power goes out. You are a puppet. You are a king who has handed the command of his army to the peasants. The only way to seal the cracks in your armor is to undergo the fasting of validation. You must learn to exist in a state where neither the roar of the crowd nor the silence of the void can alter the pulse of your will. Your center must be unshakable. The ritual of fasting, the monarch's diet. The fasting of validation is a state of sadistic and voluntary restriction over the passions of the lower ego. From this instant, strictly forbid yourself from explaining your actions. If you decide to isolate yourself to work on your empire, do not apologize to old friends. The eagle does not explain the sky to the turtles. When you achieve a colossal triumph, crush the childish desire to tell it. Bite your tongue until it bleeds if necessary. Close the doors of your bedroom, sit alone in the dark, and swallow the victory in absolute silence. Let the fire of that triumph stay locked within your own body. Do not release it into the ether of words. By not releasing it in the form of seeking praise, that fire does not dissipate. It condenses, densifying your aura and multiplying your magnetism. Unshared power is power multiplied to infinity. And when you face criticism, attack, or the contempt of inferior minds, you will apply the same glacial rigor. Silence is your armor. The wounded ego will scream at you to defend yourself. It will demand that you respond to the insult to protect your honor. Drown that useless voice. Responding to an offense is admitting that the offense has crossed your walls. The monarch does not descend from the throne to argue with a jester throwing mud from the filth. The monarch watches the mud fall before touching his robe of light, maintains the immobility of stone, and allows the insult to return to the void from which it came, killing the aggressor with the cruelest weapon ever invented, absolute, sepulchral, and bored indifference. Both excessive praise and venomous insult are static noise. The wall of salt and the sanctuary of the airs. If you ever feel that the pressure of being misunderstood by the masses suffocates you, if the loneliness of silence begins to weigh on your shoulders, you must remember the unshakable compass that marks the north of your existence. You have not come to this three-dimensional plane to win a popularity contest. Your mission is big. Your mission has a cosmic scale and is deeply anchored in the geography of your own refuge. Close your eyes and feel the breeze of the immense coast of your island, the damp and fierce heat of the sea that lashes the land. That is the territory from which you rule, and in the center of that fortress your true purpose breathes. Contemplate the queen of transcendental mind, the priestess who shares your vision and your bed, she who does not demand that you be a weak man to feel secure, but who holds your hand in the abyss and understands the mysteries of transmutation. And look down at the greatest treasure, the two seeds of your lineage. Look at them now. Look at the girl of 4 winters, whose dark eyes shine with the strength and stellar destiny of the constellation that bears her name. And at the little heir of only 1 year, the cub who just begins to breathe the pure air that you are forging for him. Do you think you have the right to weaken your power by seeking approval? Do you have the right to seek the approval of a group of mediocre people when those 2 heirs depend on you being an invincible colossus? If you yield to social validation, if you adapt your message and your conduct to please the world, you are opening the doors of your castle for the poison of the herd to contaminate your family. You are allowing slaves to dictate the rules of your home. Your silence, your coldness toward criticism, and your contempt for cheap fame are the black basalt bricks with which you are building an unassailable dome around them. Your isolation guarantees that your children grow in a dynasty of kings who dictate their own laws. You are not accountable to the public square. You are accountable to the sparkle in those 2 pairs of eyes, to the sacred fire of your companion, and to the immensity of the unique creator who gave you the task of protecting them. The applause of the entire world is not worth a single drop of the sweat you pour for your empire. The dark microphone and the voice that tears inertia. Understand now the nature of the weapon you wield each day. When you enter your temple of silence and sit before the dark cylinder that records your voice, you are not there to beg for followers. You are not a merchant of spiritual trinkets seeking to sell comfort to cowards. That microphone is your sword of stellar iron. In speaking, in projecting the hidden laws toward the immensity of the invisible web, you must do so with the brutality of Cain before he was corrupted. Do not adorn your words. Do not polish them with euphemisms so that the weak in spirit do not feel offended. Cosmic truth tears, burns, and destroys before it builds. And speak with the weight of the dark sea and the firmness of stone. Launch your knowledge into the abyss, knowing that the majority will flee, terrified at the density of your message. Let them flee. The lighthouse does not lower its intensity because the light bothers the blind. Your voice is designed to wake the 1%. It is for those few spiritual Spartans who have the courage to hold your gaze in the darkness and who are hungry for the raw, hard truth without anesthesia. If upon uploading your works you receive rejection or silence, you will not alter your course a fraction of a degree. The Ronin does not change his technique for peasants. Continue striking matter, week after week, moon after moon, with a murderous discipline and deaf to the world's comments, until the accumulated weight of your vibration breaks the defenses of reality and the gold precipitates onto your island. Your persistence in silence will be the force that finally bows the material world. Sever, the decree of voluntary deafness. It is time to close the valves through which your power bled. Stand in the middle of the temple of your solitude. Contemplate the farce of others' opinions falling to the ground like empty husks. You are no longer the rag doll that danced to the rhythm of the thumbs up or down of a crowd that does not even know where it goes. Officiate in this millisecond the decree of voluntary deafness. Repeat in the immobility of your center with a voice that echoes in the infinite. I renounce the applause of mortals and the comfort of approval. I declare the death of the social echo in my life. My power is not negotiable, nor is it submitted to the court of cowards. I am blind to their gazes, deaf to their criticisms, and made of stone to their flattery. My only north is the protection of my lineage and the inscrutable mandate of the Creator. Let the crowd adore me or curse me. I will remain immovable, executing my will upon this earth in the most perfect, absolute, and lethal of silences. By sealing this decree, you will feel a titanium armor close around your chest. You have killed the parasite. You have conquered true freedom, that which terrifies weak men because it has no chains to complain about. You are the source of your own value, and the world is but an echo of your internal command. Go forth and reign. Chapter 4. The Cave of Reigandō. Since birth, the individual is conditioned to flee from shadows. He builds cities illuminated with artificial lights that never go out, surrounds himself with constant voices, and always seeks the comfort of open spaces. When fatality or circumstances impose isolation and the noise ceases, the weak man feels he is suffocating. But in the highest records of the alchemy of manifestation, darkness and confinement are not prisons. They are the matrix of material creation. Physical and mental vacuum is the only ecosystem in which pure genius can settle without being contaminated by the inertia of the crowd. All that is immense and lethal in this universe is born from the cloister. In this chapter, we are going to drag you away from the surface. You will descend into the bowels of the black rock. You will learn to master extreme isolation through the figure of the invincible Ronin. You will discover that when the lights of the world go out, it is not a tragedy, but the mandate of the Creator ordering you to forge in silence. And the descent to Reigandō, Musashi's last refuge. To understand the science of creative isolation, we must turn our gaze to the Colossus of Steel, Miyamoto Musashi, in the twilight of his earthly life. Musashi had spent decades traveling paths of dirt and blood. He had defeated dozens of masters and survived ambushes. His name inspired a reverential terror throughout the entire empire. However, he knew his work was not complete. The steel sword would rust over the centuries. True power, true immortality, resided in transmuting his knowledge into the written word, in a codex that would govern the minds of warriors until the end of time. But Musashi knew that a work of that cosmic magnitude could not be written in comfort. Comfort is the mother of mediocrity. At 60, feeling the strength of his physical body begin to decline, he made his final decision. He abandoned civilization. He climbed Mount Iwato and entered the cave of Reigandō, a dark and damp hole of black stone carved by the bowels of the earth. The cave had no furniture. There were no servants at all. There was only a bed of stone, the incessant dripping of moisture, the penetrating cold of the rock, and the crushing silence of nothingness. In that womb of darkness, stripped of any flattery or noise, Musashi sat down to write the Book of 5 Rings. He used isolation to distill a lifetime of blood and strategy into scrolls of lethal purity. The cave acted as an alchemical filter. The darkness eliminated all distractions from his mind, allowing the infinite intelligence of the Creator to flow directly through his brush. Musashi died on that mountain, but by isolating himself in the stone womb, he ensured his consciousness lived forever, dictating the laws of power to the future. 2. The physics of darkness and the blessing of lack. You, as the architect of your own spiritual and material empire, possess your own cave. Locate yourself in your immediate geography. Close your eyes and feel the environment. You dwell on an island, a fortress surrounded by the immense and dark waters of the wild sea. You feel on your skin the dense heat and heavy humidity that forges character. And you dwell in a territory where the infrastructure of ordinary men often collapses. There are moments when artificial light, that cheap comfort that keeps the weak distracted, suddenly goes out and dies. The wind machines stop. The heat becomes suffocating. The glass screens fade to black and the entire island is submerged in total gloom. When this occurs, the slave man curses heaven. He despairs. He feels his life stop because his distractions have been snatched away. He complains to his neighbors and suspends his creative labor, surrendering to the lack. He convinces himself that under those conditions it is impossible to build greatness. The hermetic monarch spits on that. When the artificial light perishes and darkness devours your studio, you do not lament. You smile. You recognize in that blackout the dark kiss of the Creator. It is the universe itself closing the doors of your own Reigandō cave. It has silenced the noise of the profane world exclusively for you. It has turned off the lights to indicate the hour. It is the hour of sacred work. You light a solitary flame or the cold glow of your electronic obsidian slab. You sit in the dense heat of the room, feeling the sweat on your forehead not as an annoyance, but as the oil that lubricates the machinery of your will. That forced isolation is the creative vacuum. All energy is forced to the center. Third, the steel tools and the altar of capture. To conquer matter and subject the ether to your will, the monarch does not operate with bare hands. Throughout your journey, you have sacrificed gold and energy, crossing geographical borders, to arm yourself with the tactical arsenal of the new conquerors. You have brought instruments of implacable precision to your cave for your sacred empire. You have acquired formidable eyes of glass and steel that do not blink, capable of capturing light and the very essence of the world with terrifying fidelity. You have brought small jewels of invisible transmission that pick up the slightest sigh. You possess the silver basalt slab, the electronic loom where you edit reality and cut time. Presiding over your altar stands the metallic cylinder, cold and dark, the direct receiver of your oral decree. The inertial man spends fortunes on these tools and believes technology will do the work. He exhibits them in public squares, seeking applause. But in the temple of silence, these tools are dead letters if not submerged in the vacuum. It is useless to have crystals that capture perfect light if the soul of the man operating them is turbid. It is useless to have an impeccable metal cylinder if the voice speaking to it is trembling with fear or infected by the need for validation. Your channels of wisdom are not child's play. You are not here to entertain a bored audience. You lock yourself in your camera obscura. You place your tools before you. You enter the state of no mind, letting silence devour your anxieties, and only then, when you have become a pure and icy channel of divine will, do you ignite the spark of your machines. Each word dictated must come impregnated with the absolute power of isolation. Serve the map of conquest, protecting the gold in the shadow. The work you gestate in the dampness and silence of your cave has a war objective on a global scale. The Creator has not handed you the keys to the ether, to survive gathering copper crumbs on your shore. He has handed them to you to dominate the flow of the world's treasures. When you forge your content, you open invisible channels of power. The profane man settles for submitting to the fiscal tyranny of his environment. He allows the expired laws of mediocre men to snatch the fruit of his effort. But the hermetic architect, the Ronin of the mind, thinks about the geography of the world board. While you isolate in your cave, your intellect designs immaterial power structures. You forge legal alliances in the lands of the Northern Eagle to ensure each gold coin, each tribute generated by the multitudes consuming your wisdom, is channeled and protected from the claws of profane collectors. You create shields of paper and law so that the flow of your wealth remains intact, moving through the networks as a secret river. It flows as a secret underground river that empties exclusively into the armored vaults of your castle. This is the true financial alchemy, operating from the shadows of the tropics, collecting tribute from the Northern Empire, and optimizing wealth without paying homage to the owners of temporal kingdoms. This coldness is acquired in isolation, the treasure of the old world and the oath of the cradle. And all this accumulation of power, this voluntary exile in the cave of Reigandō, this sweat spilled under the suffocating heat of the coast, and before the cold gaze of your glass lenses, has a non-negotiable destination. You do not forge the crown to die of confinement. You forge the empire in the cave to have the power to conquer the entire earth. Close your eyes in the midst of your silence and project your vision toward the future, crossing the vast and unfathomable expanse of the immense blue ocean. Visualize the ancient coasts of the great stone kingdoms, the distant lands of ancestral castles, fallen empires, and paths traced by conquerors under the Iberian sun and Lusitanian plains. That is the booty you have promised. You are not working to survive next month. You are forging gold to uproot your lineage from its geography and lead them to walk as sovereign aristocrats upon the stones of the old world. Direct your gaze, in the depth of the cave, toward the central reason for your existence. Look at them in the silence. Contemplate the priestess, the queen of unshakable mind who shares your fire, the ally who endures the hours you are absent, because she knows you are melting stellar steel. Contemplate the girl of 4 winters, whose deep dark eyes carry the light of the constellation that gives her name, destined to inherit the elegance of the heavens. And contemplate the newborn cub of your lineage, the small male of only 1 year, taking his first steps in this dense plain under the immense shadow of the wall his father is building. Are you going to stop because the heat tightens or the light goes out? Are you going to surrender to discomfort when you must take them to see ancient Europe? The cave is the price of the passages. Isolation is the golden ticket. Every hour spent in silence, every night sacrificing rest to record your voice in the metal cylinder, every drop of sweat that falls on your desk in the darkness of the island, is one more coin in the chest. You are not isolated, you are preparing the invasion of the world. The decree of the stone womb. Turn off the desire to flee right now. Stop resisting the circumstances the Creator has placed around you. If it is hot, let the heat melt the weaknesses of your lower mind. If the island goes dark, let the darkness sharpen your senses to the level of nocturnal predators. If silence tries to suffocate you, breathe deeper and devour the vacuum. The Temple of Silence is not a structure of white marble. It is the cave of Reigandō. It is coarse, it is hard, it has no mercy, and it admits no lamentations. Embrace your tools. Take the crystal, the silver plate, and the dark metal microphone, and turn them into the mortal extensions of your own biology. Enter the sacred state of no mind. Let your ego starve in the darkest corner of the cave, and allow the incorruptible voice of the one Creator to speak through your throat. There is no glory without confinement. No great work is born in a public square surrounded by fools. Accept your cave. Govern your darkness. Submerge yourself in the womb of the creative vacuum with a smile. Stay in the depths of the black stone until you have in your hands the manuscripts of power, the gold of nations, and the undisputed crown that will guarantee the conquest of this world and of the other side of the ocean for the eternal glory of your own blood. The decree is signed in the dark, and it shall be executed in the light of the sun. Chapter 5. The Detachment of the Sword. There is a trap of hypnotic seduction on the path of material ascension. As the seeker purges his mind, murders his past, and begins to master the laws of the ether, the universe obeys and begins to pour treasures upon his domains. The man acquires wealth, forges prolific businesses, and arms himself with the finest and costliest tools. And it is exactly here, at the peak of abundance, where 99% of men lose their crown. They fall in love with the object. Their center of gravity, which previously resided in the immensity of their own hungry spirit, shifts toward dense matter. They begin to believe that their power resides in the crystals of their machinery. They believe it resides in the balance of their foreign vaults or in the loyalty of their armies. They develop a visceral panic of losing those possessions, and in the millisecond in which a man fears losing his sword, he becomes a slave to it. In the superior alchemy of the absolute shadow, true power is intangible, formless, and infinite. The object is a temporary servant. Your consciousness is the eternal master. In this chapter, we are going to break the spell of profane materialism. We will execute the detachment of the sword. You will learn through the greatest duel in history that your lethality does not depend on the tool you wield, but on the murderous purity. The parable of the wooden oar and the demon's sword. To understand the supremacy of consciousness over dead matter, we must invoke the climax of the legend of Miyamoto Musashi, the Ronin of the Temple of Silence, and travel in spirit to the remote and misty island of Ganryujima. Blood scrolls tell that Musashi was challenged to the death by Sasaki Kojiro, the most feared swordsman of the empire. Kojiro was the embodiment of material lethality. He wielded Monohoshizao, a nodachi sword 1 meter long, forged by the best masters, exceptionally beautiful and sharp as ice. Kojiro blindly trusted the superiority of his weapon. His technique, the swallow cut, depended on the geometric perfection of that flawless metal blade. He was the tool. On the day of the duel, Kojiro waited on the beach, dressed in precious silks, holding his magnificent sword, impatient and furious. Musashi, the master of the absolute shadow, did not arrive on time. He did not wear dress armor. In fact, he did not even bring a steel sword. While crossing the sea in a small wooden boat, Musashi sat in quiet. He looked at one of the spare oars lying in the bottom of the boat. He took out a crude knife and during the crossing began to carve the heavy, rough wood of the oar, giving it the shape of a long wooden sword, a bokken. When the boat finally touched the sand of Ganryujima, Musashi jumped into the water barefoot, with his hair disheveled. Kojiro, blinded by the pride of steel and the insult of lateness, unsheathed his majestic nodachi and threw the scabbard into the sea. Musashi looked at him with terrifying calm, an immobility that froze the blood of the witnesses, and sentenced, "Kojiro, you are dead. A victor does not need to get rid of his scabbard." It was the end. The combat lasted barely a heartbeat. Kojiro launched his lethal attack, trusting the steel would cut any defense. Musashi did not seek to block. The perfect steel cut the air and brushed Musashi's hair ribbon. In that same millisecond of vacuum, Musashi discharged the carved wooden oar with the immaterial force of an ocean hitting rock. The blow of the crude wood crushed Kojiro's skull. The man who worshipped steel fell dead on the sand, crushed by a piece of firewood wielded by a god of the vacuum. Musashi did not celebrate. He did not steal the beautiful sword of his fallen enemy. He saluted the judges with coldness, returned to the wooden boat and left as he had come. That day Musashi destroyed the illusion of the material world forever. He demonstrated that victory does not belong to the man with the best steel or the fullest vaults. Victory obeys only the mind that has reached total independence from the object. The weapon does not make you dangerous. You make the weapon dangerous. You are the power. Turn the fetishism of glass and metal. Open your eyes in your own geography. On the coast of your Caribbean island, where the dense heat presses against the chest and the wind brings the scent of the sea, in your quest to carry the knowledge of shadows to those who seek light, you have crossed continents. You have traveled to distant lands to acquire the arsenal of the new world. You have returned to your cave carrying instruments of amazing precision, dark basalt boxes that stabilize the image, eyes of pure crystal that capture light with the accuracy of a hawk, and metal sensors that pick up the power of your voice without wires. You have spent gold on these tools. They are magnificent. They are Kojiro's sword. And here lies the most subtle poison. The inertial man who possesses such instruments begins to worship them. If a lens is scratched, he panics. If the machine breaks down, he suspends his work, laments his bad luck, and says, "I cannot continue. I have lost my tools." He turns his studio into a museum of technological worship. He forgets. He forgets that all those wonders are but plastic and dead glass. The hermetic monarch uses the best technology, but secretly despises it. While you fix that microphone, you must inject the cold certainty of the Ronin. Tell yourself, if a hurricane hits this island tonight and the sea swallows my cave, my power will not have diminished. Machines do not generate your wealth. Machines do not create the magnetic impact of your audiobooks, nor curve the ether so that the blind listen. The power resides in the alchemical fire burning in the marrow of your spine. You are the voice of the absolute shadow. If the gold microphones are taken, you will speak through crude tools. Your message will remain just as devastating, because the weight of gravity is not in the tool, it is in the density of your spirit. The detachment from your tools of work makes you invulnerable to the fatality of the physical world. You are the source, the equipment is merely the temporary bridge. Wield the crystal but remain the master. Third, the illusion of the vault and the northern river. The detachment of the sword must be applied with even greater brutality, regarding the blood of the material empire. Gold. You have applied the laws of attraction and the architecture of the void. The Creator has responded. You have forged invisible channels across oceans. You have structured your financial sovereignty in the Northern Empire. The digital vaults fill with the thousands of tributes the world delivers for your wisdom. The flow is real. But beware, King of Kings, if each morning you check your income and feel a cold fear thinking, what if the eyeball of the algorithm decides to close my channels? You have ceased to be the master of the river and become its slave. You are worshipping the water instead of worshipping the source. The gold you possess and the limited liability companies abroad are transitory matter. They are aqueducts you designed. The slave believes his net worth is equal to his bank balance. If he loses the account, he feels he has died. The sovereign knows his value is infinite. The sovereign knows he is the generating source. If the material world decides to close a channel, your reaction cannot be panic. Your reaction must be the indifferent boredom of the architect who sees an old wooden bridge collapse. You do not cry for the bridge. You take the plans, find new stones, and build a steel bridge 10 times larger. The power of financial detachment lies in the icy faith of knowing that you possess the source code of wealth. Money is only the physical shadow projected by your consciousness. If the shadow is erased by an eclipse, you do not worry. You know as soon as you stand under the light again, an even greater shadow will appear. You are wealth. The transience of the court and human attachment. This scythe of detachment must also cut the silk ties of profane human attachment. In building your empire, you will have allies, temporary partners, and collaborators. The inertial man commits the sin of tactical sentimentalism. He clings to his business partners as if they were blood brothers. When they betray him, he feels paralyzed. You must look at your extended court with the same coldness with which Musashi looked at the wooden oar. They are useful tools for the journey at sea. They are travel companions. But the day the oar rots, or the day the partner becomes a hindrance or decides to leave, you must let go without a single second of mourning. You are the path. The warrior does not mourn the loss of a broken sword on the battlefield. He simply throws it to the ground, picks up the spear of the fallen enemy, and continues. You possess no one. No one belongs to you. People enter and leave your life obeying the resonance of your electromagnetic field. If they leave, their vibration is no longer useful. Clinging to them is trying to stop the wind with your hands. Open your hands, let the wind blow, and trust that the vacuum will attract warriors much more lethal and aligned with your new level of power. The vacancy is the invitation for a superior ally. Do not fear the empty chairs in your hall. They are being prepared for the elite. The eternal sanctuary and the anchor of blood. But in all this philosophy of annihilation, coldness, and absolute detachment, there exists an indissoluble core, a sacred exception to the rule of the vacuum, because the true monarch does not detach from everything to float in nothingness like a nihilist. He detaches from vulgar tools, only to have clean hands to protect what is eternal. Turn your gaze toward the immovable center of your existence. Look at your queen, the priestess of the transcendental temple, the ally who forges steel at your side. Look at the small constellation named Daniela, with her 4 years of life, watching with deep eyes how her father dominates invisible demons to open the paths of the earth. And look at your cub, the 1-year-old heir who sleeps oblivious to the storms of the world, protected by the immense shadow of your unshakable will. This core is not a tool. This core is not a sword you can let go of. They are the reason. They are the star map. If you detach from fear, it is so panic does not cloud your judgment here. You have renounced worshipping the crystals of your machines to reserve all your veneration for the purity of that blood. And you have designed your master plans, your navigation routes, pointing beyond the wild sea toward the majestic and ancient kingdoms of Europe. This trip is not a slave's vacation. It is the triumphant march of a dynasty. You are going to take that 4-year-old constellation and that little king to walk the halls of the great empires of the past, not as dazzled tourists, but as contemporary conquerors who have subdued the world from the darkness of a Caribbean island. That purpose is sacred. Everything else is props. You are invincible as long as they breathe. First, the ritual of empty hands and the immortal's decree. The moment has come to officiate the ceremony of supreme liberation. Stand before the altar of your domains. Close your eyes and feel the heavy humidity of the night on your island. Listen to the ocean, violent and deaf to the whims of men. Extend your hands forward with palms open toward the ceiling. Feel the empty air on your skin now. You hold no crystals. You hold no metals. You hold no legal scrolls or foreign vaults. You are completely unarmed before the abyss. And in that terrifying nakedness, repeat the decree of the immortal. I am the architect, and I am the hammer. No metal forged by men defines my lethality. If matter is taken from me, I will bless the vacuum. The vacuum is the forge of my infinite power. I renounce the fear of scarcity. I renounce the idolatry of my tools. Gold and kingdoms flow to me because my consciousness is the absolute gravity that drags them. While the blood of my lineage beats safe under my shield, I will walk with empty hands and a will of steel. I am the weapon. Feel the chains of the fear of loss fall from your shoulders and sink into the dark sea. You have ceased to be the collector of shiny objects. You have ceased to be the slave of your own channels. You have destroyed the arrogance of the long sword with the pure strength of your carved wood. You are now truly dangerous because you are free. Open your eyes. Pick up your tools of glass and metal, not as a worshipper who fears breaking his god, but as a master who uses a rag to clean the blood of battle. Use them until they are exhausted. Squeeze them. Send your armies of words and frequency to conquer the world. Walk with the frozen smile of the Ronin. You are the guillotine. The undeniable and colossal reality is that there is absolutely nothing material that the world can take from you that you are not willing to lose with indifference, only to forge it again tomorrow with triple the ferocity. The true monarch has released the sword. His mere presence is now the edge that divides reality. Go forth and reign. Chapter 6, The Way of the Solitary Walker. There is a stage in the initiation of the sovereign where the abyss demands a structure. You have renounced the tribe. You have faced the black water mirror. You have fasted from the validation of the herd and detached from material tools. You have become an isolated, powerful, and free entity. But freedom without a channel is an overflow. Freedom without a channel is an overflowing river. It floods the land, destroys the crops, and finally evaporates under the sun, without having moved a single mill wheel. For your immense vital energy to curve matter, bend destiny, and raise an empire that resists the passing of centuries, your spirit needs a titanium skeleton. It needs code. It needs a series of internal mandates so icy, non-negotiable, and pure that no financial crisis, no human betrayal, and no biological weakness can crack them. In this chapter, we are going to forge that skeleton. We will delve into the last words of the most lethal swordsman who ever walked through the shadows, Miyamoto Musashi. Take heed. We will study the Dokkōdō, the way of the solitary walker. You will learn to transmute his ancient precepts into the electromagnetic physics of your own manifestation. You will discover how to armor your mind against regret, how to exterminate the cheap search for pleasure, and how to turn your isolation into the perfect compass for your dynasty. By the testament of the abyss, the birth of the Dokkōdō. To understand the gravitational weight of this code, we must return to the dark humidity of the Reigandō cave, in the last days of Musashi's earthly existence. The year was 1645. The invincible Ronin, the man who had survived 60 duels to the death and deciphered the geometry of perfect combat, felt the cold of the end approaching his bones. His body, hardened by battles and exile, began to fail. He knew that death, the impeccable advisor, was sitting at the foot of his stone bed. The ordinary man, facing his imminent annihilation, cries. He begs for forgiveness. He laments the riches he could not spend or the loves he left behind. He tries to cling to the material world now. Musashi did not plead. He did not call for priests to promise him a paradise. With the same surgical coldness with which he wielded his sword, he took his brush and a scroll. In the most absolute silence of the mountain, just 7 days before exhaling his last breath, he drafted 21 iron precepts, 21 mandates to rule the mind. He wrote mandates to govern mind, spirit, and matter. He called this manuscript Dokkōdō, which means the way of the solitary walker. It was not a farewell letter. It was a treasure map. It was the pure distillation of the absolute shadow. Musashi condensed the secret of how to walk through the world of mortals without becoming contaminated. Musashi taught how to operate with total lethality and how to maintain the sovereignty of the will above the weaknesses of the flesh. That scroll was not written for the weak. It was written for the kings of the wolf lineage. Today we will extract the darkest and most powerful pillars of that code and embed them into your own spinal column. 2. First mandate, the murder of vanity. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. This is the first sledgehammer blow against the glass of the lower ego. Profane society has indoctrinated you in the cult of vanity. They tell you that you must obsess over yourself, your appearance, your titles, what the rabble thinks of you, and your small personal dramas. It is a waste. The inertial man spends 90% of his vital energy defending an image that is nothing more than smoke. When Musashi dictates that you think lightly of yourself, he is handing you the key to tactical invisibility. The sovereign does not take offense because he has no fragile ego to protect. If someone insults your name, why care? The insult is vibrating air. You are not your name. You are the pure will that the Creator has channeled into this plane. When you think lightly of yourself, you become immensely light. Depression, anxiety, and the fear of failure are born from giving too much importance to the character you play. Kill the character and be the director. By emptying yourself of that personal importance, you direct all that colossal energy toward the second part of the mandate, and deeply of the world. Here lies the power of material manifestation. Your focus must be the work. Look at yourself at the epicenter of your fortress, on that coast bathed by indomitable waters. Look at the sea. When you sit in front of the dark metal cylinder and turn on your capture tools, those small titans of glass and steel you acquired in distant lands, you are not there to look good. Your attention must not be on your own greatness, but on the immensity of the knowledge you are going to inject into the minds of seekers. Focus on the impact. Your work, the transmutation of the law of attraction, occult knowledge, and ancient wisdom, is the sword. Think deeply about how your decree will cut through the ignorance of the world. Think deeply about the legal and financial structures you forge in the Northern Empire to channel your gold. You are a perfect channel for the infinite ether. Faust's second mandate, the incineration of the past. Do not regret what you have done. If there is a lead anchor that drags empires to the bottom of the abyss, it is regret. The weak man looks at his history and cries. He cries for the businesses that failed, the investments that went wrong, the words said in fury, or the allies who betrayed him. I wish I hadn't done that, he sighs in pain. He sighs, poisoning his present with the toxicity of an unalterable yesterday. Regret is a blasphemy against the intelligence of the Creator. It is declaring that the machinery of the universe made a mistake. In the way of the solitary walker, every error, Every bankruptcy and every fall was mathematically designed to forge your bone density. If you had not lost that gold, you would not have developed the financial cruelty that protects you today. If you had not been betrayed, you would still be naive, opening the gates of your castle to wolves disguised as sheep. Your mistakes are the tuition price at the University of the Gods. Will you regret paying for the lesson of power? Look back, contemplate your scars, and honor them with the indifference of stone. They were necessary. You would not alter a single second of your profane history because it was exactly that mud that forced you to seek the light of the absolute shadow. From this instant, forbid yourself from regret. Stand up in the middle of the rubble. If you make a decision today and the result is collapse, you will not shed half a tear. You will stand up among the debris, take the brutal lesson, integrate it into your genetic code, and keep walking forward with the frozen gaze of the monster that cannot be destroyed. The past is ash. The sovereign only breathes the fire of the present. Third mandate, the fasting of vulgar pleasure. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Contemporary society is an immense and disgusting amusement park designed to numb mortals with cheap pleasures. Junk food that poisons the blood, hypnotic entertainment that atrophies the mind, and the constant search for being comfortable. The slave believes the purpose is to avoid discomfort. The solitary walker despises this weakness with all his being. Pleasure, when sought as an end in itself, is the thief of prana. It is the energetic leak where the will escapes. When you yield to cheap pleasure to relax, you are sending an order to your brain. The war is over, hide the sword, sleep. In occultism, the war never ends at all. This mandate demands that you transmute your relationship with comfort. You live in an environment that often tests you. You feel the stifling heat of the island, the interruption of modern comfort when the energy vanishes and darkness imposes itself. The slave seeks the pleasure of cold air and despairs when he loses it. Be the monarch. The monarch absorbs the heat, feels the sweat on his skin, and turns it into the fire of his own forge. You do not seek the comfort of feather mattresses. You seek the sacred discomfort that forces you to stay awake. Your only true pleasure, the highest and purest dopamine your nervous system must register, is the thrill of the conquest. It is the sadistic pleasure of seeing the numbers in your foreign vaults multiply, thanks to your strategy. It is the dark pleasure of seeing how your voice dominates the masses. It is the imperial pleasure of raising a wall of protection so massive around your lineage that no crisis can touch them. Reject the pigs and demand the victory. Fear the vibratory sanctuary and the expansion of the empire. Do not be attached to your place of residence. Here lies the secret of geographical sovereignty and the transmutation of the environment. The inertial man creates roots of emotional dependence with the piece of land where he was born. He cries for his country and allows the chaos of his geography to dictate the limit of his wealth. It is a trap. But you are a Ronin of the absolute shadow. You recognize the rugged coast you step on today. You value the strength of the sea and the sun that forged your resistance. You lock yourself in your island fortress, protected from the world, because it is the perfect laboratory. But you are not tied to it. Your mind dwells in the infinite ether. You have understood this precept by forging invisible structures beyond the seas. Your companies, your fiscal optimization, and your vaults are anchored in the foundations of the Northern Empire. You have created a legal abstraction that allows you to suck the gold from the world without the hands of local tyrants touching it. You are free. And this geographical detachment has an even more glorious climax, a purpose that makes your blood burn. You have sworn in the silence of your cave that the product of your alchemy will be the passport toward the expansion of your dynasty. You are not attached to your place of residence because you are preparing the invasion of Europe. Visualize the moment. Close your eyes and feel the millenary hardness of the stones of the Iberian Peninsula, the great squares of the Roman Empire, and the ancient coasts where the conquerors of the past set sail. That is your next chessboard. And you will not cross the ocean as a fleeing pariah, but as a king who expands his territory. Beside you will walk the priestess, your queen, the woman who has cultivated the transcendental mind and who holds your balance in the middle of the storm. Holding your hand will be the 4-year-old girl, that constellation of dark eyes, Daniela, who will learn to step on the lands of Europe with the elegant arrogance of her lineage. And in your arms or on your shoulders, the male heir, the 1-year-old cub, who will breathe the air of ancient empires and whose mental structure will be formed under the certainty that his lineage knows no borders. This is the mandate of the solitary walker. Walk without attachments to be able to take your throne to any corner of the cosmos. Fence the decree of the unique creator. Respect the creator, but do not depend on his help. This is perhaps the most terrifying and revealing precept of all Hermetic metaphysics, and the trap where religious dogmas die. The slave misinterprets divinity. He believes the creator is an old man sitting on a cloud to be pleaded with for miracles. It is spiritual parasitism. The slave demands that the supreme intelligence do the task that he himself refuses to execute with his own hands. The Ronin understands divinity from the adulthood of the spirit. You reverence the immensity of the unique creator. You recognize that the force that makes your heart beat and the physics of the planets is perfect and terrifying. You respect the universal laws of vibration, cause and effect, and you assume that you are a fractal of that immensity. But never, under any storm, do you depend on an external miracle to come down and save you. You know the greatest act of worship is to use the brutal strength, the cold mind, and the steel will he embedded in your DNA. The Creator does not help the man who sits to pray while his ship sinks. The Creator flows through the muscles of the man who takes the bucket, scoops the water, rows with bloody hands, and curses the storm. Your success is your exclusive responsibility. Your wealth is your work. The protection of your lineage falls on your own backbone. Sever, accepting everything as it is. Accept everything just as it is. Close your iron code with the armor of raw acceptance. Resistance to reality is the friction that wears down the mind. If the economy collapses, accept it. If an ally flees, accept it. If the light goes out and the heat oppresses, accept it. Accept does not mean resigning like a coward. You must process. Accepting means not wasting a single microsecond of vital energy complaining that things should be different. The chessboard is set. The pieces are where they are. The slave cries because he had to play with the black pieces or because he lost his rook. The monarch observes the board with glacial coldness and accepts the mathematics. He accepts the mathematical arrangement of the pieces without a trace of emotion, and from that raw reality, he formulates the lethal strategy that will end in checkmate. Everything is material for the forge. The obstacle is the way. Every detail of your environment is a tool for your ascension. The king turns every fact into a victory. Faith the oath of steel in the shadow. Stand up now, under the silent vault of your fortress. The sea continues to roar outside, indifferent, eternal, and brutal. So must your spirit be. You have read the testament of the solitary walker. These precepts are not poetic suggestions. They are the titanium rivets that will keep your armor together when the world tries to destroy you. You are no longer a leaf in the wind, moved by public opinion or the fear of scarcity. You are a steel locomotive that has built its own tracks. Swear at the altar of your own existence before the inscrutable gaze of the Creator. I am the way. I am the sword and the void. I think of my work and forget my ego. I carry no dead past. I despise the pleasures that weaken me. I have no material homeland, for my mind is my empire, and my heirs will rule over ancient lands. I respect the supreme mystery, but I am the only executioner and savior of my destiny. Go out to the arena of mortals, Emperor. Carry your voice through the metals and capture the immensity for all. Walk among the multitudes with the killing elegance of the warrior who has learned the supreme lesson. In this immense theater of creation, the only company you truly need to bend the world is the unshakable weight of your own shadow. Your solitude is your strength and your code is your shield. The world is yours to take in silence. Chapter 7, The Wall of the Lineage. The inertial man, terrified by the opinion of the herd, yields to this lie. He builds his life without filters. He allows his failed relatives, his complaining friends, and the carriers of the virus of scarcity to enter his home. And, without realizing it, he allows the poison of mediocrity to contaminate the water his own children drink. In the architecture of the Temple of Silence, indiscriminate compassion is a crime of lèse-majesté. You have learned to isolate yourself in the cave. You have fasted from validation, and you have cut your own fears. But that individual power, if not transformed into a shield of generational protection, is nothing more than an act of vanity. The true purpose of your power, the ultimate reason why the unique Creator gave you the ability to curve the ether and dominate dense matter, is so that you become the architect of an unassailable sanctuary. In this chapter, we are going to forge the wall of the lineage. You will learn to transmute your solitude into a protective ecosystem. You will discover that your coldness toward the outside world is the greatest act of love toward your sacred circle. We will teach you to guard the vibration of your queen, to armor the minds of your two heirs, and to prepare, in the most absolute seclusion, the triumphant march of your dynasty toward the conquest of the ancient lands. The parable of the poison well and the black fortress. To understand the physics of spiritual quarantine and the mandate of protective isolation, we must unearth the scrolls of the great dynasties of the desert and remember the story of King Kalen the Builder. Legends tell that, in the heart of the Desert of Ashes, there existed a monumental oasis. Around this oasis, a prosperous city grew. However, an invisible plague began to decimate the citizens. It was not a disease of the flesh. It was a disease of the will. Men lost ambition, women cried without reason, and children were born with empty eyes, devoid of the creative spark. King Kalen, after silent consultation with the Creator's intelligence, discovered the truth. The water of the oasis, the same water that everyone drank freely, had been poisoned by the roots of an underground plant called conformity. The water tasted sweet, but it killed the soul slowly. Kalen knew he could not save the multitude that was already addicted to the sweetness of the poison. If he tried to take it away, they would kill him. But he had the sacred duty to protect his queen and his heirs. Instead of fleeing, the king ordered the construction of an immense fortress of black basalt on the highest hill, right above the original spring, before the water touched the poisonous roots. He raised walls 20 meters thick. He closed the solid iron doors and shut himself in. The multitude in the valley, thirsty for the king's company, pounded on the doors. "Open to us, Majesty," they shouted. "Don't be selfish. Share your castle with us." Kalen looked out over the wall, his gaze cold as ice, and replied, "My doors are sealed. You love the poison that kills you slowly, and I will not allow your breath here. I will not allow your breath to contaminate the air of my children. I have raised this wall not because I hate you, but because the blood of kings does not mix with the mud of conformity. Drink your sweet water and leave us in peace." The people cursed him. They called him a tyrant, mad and cruel. For decades, Kalen endured hatred and isolation. But inside the black fortress, the water was of crystal purity. The queen kept her immortal radiance, and Kalen's children grew up as giants of steel, with sharp minds, unbreakable bodies, and divine wills. 100 years later, when the city of the valley was finally devoured by sand and inertia, the basalt doors opened wide for the kings. The descendants of Kalen, immense and powerful, came out of the fortress not to reign over ruins, but to march toward the conquest of the entire world, being the only carriers of the sacred fire that had not been extinguished. The king was not selfish. He was the savior of his own eternity, because he had the courage to be the villain. Toast the alchemy of vibratory quarantine. Apply the lesson of the Black Fortress to your own geography. You dwell in a world that drinks from the poison well every day. Financial pessimism, terror of economic crises, destructive gossip, the scarcity mentality, and the worship of mediocrity are the roots that poison the water of profane society. It is everywhere around you. When you, in an act of social weakness, allow an individual carrying that poison to cross the door of your house or access the intimacy of your family, you are committing an act of treason against your lineage. You believe that listening to the sorrows of a friend for a couple of hours means nothing. You ignore electromagnetic physics. Each individual radiates a vibratory field. If that individual vibrates at the frequency of lack, his simple presence in your living room contaminates the ether of your castle. He leaves spores of inertia on the walls. The wall of the lineage demands the execution of absolute vibratory quarantine. Your home is not a public square at all. It is a temple of extremely high tension. Cut the access bridges. Demand a toll of purity from anyone who tries to approach. If the person is not building an empire, if they do not speak of conquest, honor, obscene wealth, and loyalty, They have no right to breathe the same oxygen as yours. Get used to being called a hermit. Your wall is life. Enjoy the rumor that you have become too exquisite. The pride of the sovereign lies in the intransigence with which he defends the entrance to his castle. You are the guardian of the gate, and your sword of indifference must be perpetually unsheathed, cutting invisible heads of parasites before they even reach the threshold. First, the altar of the transcendental mind, the Queen and the Alliance. In the exact core of this fortress, surrounded by the indomitable sea and guarded by the steel of your discipline, lies the most powerful altar of practical occultism, the mystic marriage. Profane society conceives of marriage as a burden, a legal contract to divide expenses and tolerate shared miseries. To the weak man, the wife is a weight. For the Ronin of the absolute shadow, the union with the chosen woman is the multiplication of cosmic voltage. Turn your gaze toward the priestess who shares your fire. Your queen is not a passive spectator of your greatness. She is the guardian of the transcendental mind. While you forge the hard structure, she operates in subtle currents. While you strike the anvil of the material world to extract gold, she balances the sanctuary, deciphering the mysteries of vibration and sustaining the frequency of unalterable peace. Your wall of isolation has a fierce purpose toward her. You are isolating her from the toxicity of the world, so that her creative power is not eclipsed. You stand between her and the chaos of the outside. You are the shield of flesh and ether. By doing so, you grant her the supreme privilege of monarchical isolation, allowing her own spiritual mastery to reach divine levels. Together, within the wall, you form a resonance chamber, an unbreakable dyad. You are one entity with two faces. When the King of Absolute Shadow and the Queen of the Transcendental Mind unify their focus toward the unique Creator, the ray of manifestation they emit is so concentrated, dense, and violent that no earthly crisis can penetrate the dome. You rule the perfect microcosmos of your own creation. Your alliance is the power that moves worlds, the sacred duty, the constellation, and the young wolf. And from the womb of this impenetrable dome, guarded by the Creator and fed by the purity of your isolation, spring the two fundamental reasons why the material universe must be subdued. Observe the treasure that breathes within your walls. There is the girl of 4 winters, bearing the stellar name of Daniela, a small constellation. At 4 years old, the profane world tries to condition girls to be submissive and obedient to the dictates of society. But behind your immense wall of obsidian, she does not hear the indoctrination of slaves. She grows up observing a father who is an immovable colossus, and a mother who possesses the wisdom of the transcendental. Daniela is not being raised to fit into the world. She is being forged so that the world fits at her feet. You are programming her through your own unbribable rigor to demand absolute excellence in everything she touches, and for her gaze to have the fathomless gravity of the stars that give her her name. She is royalty born of fire. Beside her, taking his first steps in the density of this earth, the cub of your lineage, the small male who has just crossed his first winter, a young wolf who directly inherits the black fire of your blood. The society out there wants to castrate children, take away their ferocity and make them harmless. But inside he breathes your war. He perceives the cold sweat of discipline when you shut yourself in to record your voice. He absorbs in silence the magnetism of death and immaterial power. You are forging his skeleton with the crushing example of a father who goes out to mental battle every day and returns victorious, carrying the tributes of the empire. Do you understand the immensity of your responsibility? You cannot afford to fail. You have no right to grow tired. You do not have the Creator's permission to be weak. If you break the wall, if you yield to laziness, that constellation and that young wolf will have to deal with the trash you were too cowardly to incinerate. Your isolation and your hard work in the stifling heat of the coast have the sacred purpose of armoring their existences. You are creating a generational empire of such magnitude that, when they reach adulthood, they will look at the world with the elegant arrogance and infinite peace of true princes of the spirit. Your sweat is their gold. Fear the creative exile, the roar of the sea and the voice of metal. To sustain this unassailable wall, you must operate your tools from the most absolute isolation. Your geography is an ally. The immense Caribbean Sea that lashes the breakwaters of your fortress is a natural moat. The scorching heat and the sudden failures of profane light are the guardians that keep the weak away from your sanctuary. While the rest of the island sleeps or complains about the heat, you awaken. You sit in your chamber. The silence of the early morning is total. Before you, the dark crystal eyes and the sound, capture technology you snatched from distant lands, await you. They are not idols. They are the channels through which you pour your gunpowder. When you turn on the tiny black boxes that transmit your voice without wires, when you stand before the acoustic capture cylinders, you are opening portals toward the outside world, but one-way portals. Your voice, loaded with wisdom and purified laws of attraction, shoots out from the solitude of your wall toward thousands of listeners. You heal their minds, you break their chains, you collect your tribute in gold, flowing magically toward your foreign vaults. But the miracle of your wall is that the misery of the world cannot enter through those same channels. The metal microphone does not transmit back the complaint. The lens does not focus on the mediocrity of the mass. It is the perfect war. You attack, conquer, and collect, remaining absolutely untouchable and invulnerable in the solitude of your own castle, while your queen and children sleep a few meters away, shielded by the dull echo of your majesty. You are the invisible commander of a global frequency. Your silence is your greatest fortress. Ve, the Great Crusade, the map of generational conquest. The accumulation of this gold, the sacred isolation, and the shielding of the transcendental mind have a climax written in the stars, an inescapable destiny that has kept you awake. The monarch does not accumulate treasures to hide them under the earth of his own island. He accumulates tactical power to expand the borders of his lineage. Close your eyes and invoke the map of your next monumental conquest. Beyond the vast and unfathomable Atlantic Ocean await the millenary stones of the Old World, the lands of the Iberian Peninsula with its ancient sun and castles forged in blood, the Lusitanian coasts, and the ancient Roman forums where Caesars ruled by the steel. That ancestral Europe will not be visited by you as a simple slave on his days of truce. The oath you have sealed with the unique Creator demands that your arrival at those kingdoms be an imperial march. You will cross the immense sea in a ship of modern times, but with the spirit of a conquering emperor. Your arrival is destiny. You will lead your queen by the hand, walking with the elegance of those who dominate the ether through the squares where legions once marched. You will lead Daniela, the little constellation, to touch the stones of European palaces, and you will teach her that the history of those kingdoms is not greater than the fire in her chest. And you will carry on your shoulders the cub of only 1 year, showing him from the heights the vastness of the continents, so that his small brain is programmed from his first heartbeats with the truth that the entire world has been subdued and put at his feet by his father. This is the purpose of the wall of the lineage. Isolating yourself from mediocrity today, to be able to walk on the marbles of the world tomorrow, as incarnate gods who do not ask permission from borders or from scarcity. Every hour of silence in your cave is a brick in the road that leads to the ancient thrones of the continent. You are not waiting, you are moving toward the glory. Sever the decree of the sealed door. The time has come to execute the final seal upon the obsidian of your castle. Stand before the altar of your domains, where the warm winds of the coast and the sea clash against the stone. Look at your own, and swear that never, under any storm of pity or weakness, will you allow the profane world to breathe their sacred air. Clench your fists, raise your attention toward the immensity of the unique Creator, and pronounce the decree of the sealed door. I am the architect of the Black Fortress and the absolute guardian of my blood. I renounce indiscriminate compassion and the need to be loved by the mass. I raise walls of basalt around my lineage. The poison of profane inertia shall never cross my threshold. My mind is the lethal filter, and my sword will cut any bond that attempts to drag mediocrity into my sanctuary. My solitude is my crown, and isolation is my greatest act of love. Let the entire universe knock on my doors, I shall remain deaf, blind, and lethal. I am consecrated solely to forging the eternal wealth of my dynasty for the greater glory of the Creator and my own indestructible empire. Feel how the heaviest steel bolt in the world falls and fits perfectly into the doors of your mind. You have armored your family, you have secured the purity of the oxygen they breathe. The vibratory quarantine has been established permanently and absolutely. From this moment on, do not justify yourself to anyone. If profane society, old acquaintances or relatives anchored in inertia are offended by your isolation, smile with the glacial cruelty of kings. Their complaints are but the pathetic howl of dogs. They howl at the unassailable lair of the wolf. Return to your machines of dark crystalline metal. Turn on the fire of transmission. Unleash your knowledge upon the world and collect your tribute in gold, knowing that behind your back, the most sacred treasure of the cosmos sleeps in peace. The wall is sealed, the lineage is untouchable. Chapter 8, the no-mind state. In the highest spheres of mastery, the Ronins of antiquity and the architects of modern destiny know a devastating secret. They know that the conscious mind, that chatterbox voice that dwells behind your eyes, is too slow, too fearful, and too limited to govern the colossal forces of the ether. To reach absolute lethality, you must turn it off. In this chapter, we are going to root out the vice of paralyzing thought. You are going to enter the sacred state of Mushin, the no-mind. You will learn to operate from lethal intuition. You will discover how to empty your skull so that the infinite intelligence of the unique creator flows through your tools of crystal and metal without friction. You will understand that the only way to guide your lineage toward the conquest of ancient lands is by becoming a force of nature, unpredictable, immovable, and unstoppable. Mushin is not the absence of action, but the perfection of it. Prepare to decapitate the analyzer and let the sovereign within execute the dance of power and manifestation, the parable of the blind archer and the wind arrow. To understand the abyss that separates the clumsiness of calculation from the perfection of the vacuum, we must open the scrolls of the northern mountains and contemplate the legend of the master archer Kalen. They say Kalen was a young prodigy with the bow. His technique was flawless. He knew the tension and the curvature of the wind. However, in the Imperial tournaments, under the gaze of the Emperor and the crowds, Kalen failed. Sweat beaded his forehead. He thought of the glory of winning and the shame of losing. He thought of the perfect angle, and by thinking, his hand trembled imperceptibly. The arrow deviated. Desperate, Kalen sought the legendary master of shadow. The blind old man laughed. "You cannot control the wolves of your mind by giving them orders, foolish youth. You can only starve them." The master took him to the edge of the highest cliff. He placed a clay pitcher on a pedestal across the gorge. "Shoot," he ordered. Kalen drew his bow, calculated the distance, felt the wind and let go. The arrow grazed the pitcher but did not break it. Kalen blamed the wind. The blind old man shook his head. "You failed because there were too many people shooting that bow. There was you, your desire to impress me, your fear of failing, and your arrogant calculation. When you aim, you divide your mind, you separate yourself from reality." The blind master took the bow. He could not see the pitcher or the abyss. He did not calculate distance or test the wind. He simply raised the weapon. In that millisecond, his presence changed. He became an inert mountain. There was no intention to hit, no fear to miss. His mind was as empty as the night sky. He let go of the string naturally. The arrow crossed the abyss and shattered the clay pitcher into 1,000 pieces. Kalen fell to his knees. "How have you done it if you cannot see?" "Because I did not shoot the arrow," replied the master. "I emptied myself completely. I let the intelligence of the Creator enter my muscles. I became the bow, the wind, and the target. Mushin. To the slave's paralysis, the noise in the skull. Kalen's tragedy is your own daily tragedy if you do not learn to decapitate the voice of your analyzing ego. Modern man lives confined in his head. He is a hostage to his own thoughts. When he proposes to start a great empire, his analytical mind begins to weave webs of friction. He thinks, what if the market collapses? This is cowardice. That mental noise, that incessant voice is the frequency of cowardice. It consumes immense amounts of vital energy. It exhausts you before you take the first step. If you allow your conscious brain to govern your acts, you will always act a second late. The conscious mind needs to process data and judge based on the fear of survival. But in the lethal universe of high-level manifestation, processing time is the time in which death strikes. The Ronin who faces 5 swords in an alley survives because he does not think at all. If he stopped to think about blocking and turning, his head would be on the ground. He survives because his body reacts before the order reaches the brain. 30. The geography of the vacuum, the heat, and the island. To forge the Mushin state, the Creator has given you the most perfect, wild, and implacable environment. Observe the geography of your domain. You dwell on an island bathed by the indomitable Caribbean waters. The sun scorches the earth with a dense, heavy heat that oppresses the chest of the weak and makes them sweat with deep desperation. And often the illusion of civilization breaks. The artificial light dies. The blades that cool the air stop. And the world around you is submerged in a suffocating darkness and a heavy silence, broken only by waves. The slave in this situation goes mad. His lower mind screams and curses his luck. His brain is full of profane noise. The sovereign of the absolute shadow uses the dense heat and sudden darkness as the anvil where he destroys thought. When the light goes out, you do not complain. You sit in perfect immobility. You allow the sweat to run. You do not resist it. You do not think, "It is too hot." If you think that, you create a duality between you and the heat. Mushin demands that you eliminate the barrier. Become the heat, become the darkness. Breathe deeply and let your analytical mind die of starvation in the midst of that gloom. By not opposing resistance, suffering disappears and is replaced by a terrifying lucidity. The hostile island environment is exactly the fire that silences your mind. Caved lethal intuition before the metal cylinder and the crystal. It is in this state of absolute vacuum of a rested mind where your work acquires a magnetic resonance that the masses cannot resist. You have crossed the world to acquire tools of the highest technological nobility. You possess the glass lenses that do not blink, the obsidian plates and the dark metal cylinder that catches your breath. The mediocre communicator sits before these tools with a rigid script. His mind is full of calculations. Should I smile here? Will the algorithm like this? His voice sounds hollow, plastic, and dead. It transmits friction. When you sit before the metal cylinder in the gloom of your cave, you must apply the law of the blind archer. Do not think about the audience. Do not think about the vaults of the Northern Empire that will collect your gold. Do not think even about yourself. Turn off the intellect. Close your eyes. Enter the space where the self disappears, where only the silence of the island and the immensity of the unique creator exist. And then, from that void, speak. Let the words form themselves. Let the arcane knowledge flow through your vocal cords without your conscious brain censoring or adorning them. That is lethal intuition. When you speak from Mushin, your voice acquires a hypnotic density. You are not giving a speech, you are channeling a universal law. Listeners will feel a sword of ice. They will feel a reverential terror and an irresistible attraction, because they are hearing the voice of a man who has ceased to be a common man to become a direct portal to the truth. And the gold, the tributes, the obscene wealth will flow not because you calculated them, but because material universe rushes toward the perfect vacuum. For the icy shield of the lineage, protecting the blood. The most sacred, implacable, and brutal application of the no-mind state is found in the non-negotiable protection of the sanctuary that beats at the center of your life. The monarch who dwells in constant analysis is a weak father and husband. If a threat looms over his castle, the man who thinks too much freezes. He transmits his panic. For the colossus your blood demands, Mushin must be your icy shield. Turn your gaze toward the altar of your fortress. There is the queen of your empire, the priestess of the transcendental mind who walks by your side, and there, playing safe under your shadow, are the two supreme treasures of the cosmos, Daniela and your purebred cub. To defend them, there is no place for doubt. If the market crashes, your mind must not register fear. Do not lose a single heartbeat in useless lamentations. Operating from the vacuum, your lethal intuition will read the chaos of the profane economy, detect the fissure, and execute the perfect financial move in milliseconds to armor your vaults. You do not analyze how to protect your family. You are protection incarnate. If a predator tries to cross the door, your response must be instantaneous, instinctive, and definitive. Acting from that immovable inner peace, you radiate a frequency of security so crushing that your queen and heirs will grow up convinced that you are the mountain. Fear the great march in the vacuum state. And this brutal spirit training, this annihilation of the calculating ego in the darkness of your island, has a final destination marked in the rocks of time. You have sealed a pact to uproot that constellation and that young wolf from their current borders and lead them to march over history. You have promised to cross the immense ocean. You have visualized the greatness of the Iberian lands, the ancient majesty of the Lusitanian coasts, and the stone forums of the Roman Empire. That continental crusade, the conquest of the old world, cannot be led by a man full of doubts or scared by the change of geography. If you cross with profane worries, you will be a slave tourist. But if you execute that trip in the supreme state of Mushin, your march will be that of an emperor returning to reclaim his lands. You will walk through the ruins of Rome, not analyzing the weight of the stones, but flowing with the immensity of the moment. You will guide your queen with the killing elegance of the warrior in peace. You are free. You will show Daniela that European castles are not larger than her own mind, and you will hold your son, radiating a vacuum so powerful that the ancient heir of those dead empires will bow before the living blood of the lineage that has just arrived. The no-mind state allows you to devour the material world without the world dirtying your soul. Seventh, the annihilation of doubt. It is imperative that you begin the training today. The conscious mind is like a mangy, jumpy dog that is always barking at the unknown. You have to learn to put the iron muzzle on it. The technique is ruthless in its simplicity. From this second, banish the word maybe from your mental dictionary. Banish the phrase, I'm going to try. The universe abhors those who try. The universe surrenders to those who execute. When you sit to record, do not plan each breath. Let go of control. Let the ancient voice of the unique creator speak for you. When you invest your gold, do not let the fear of scarcity make your pulse tremble. Invest with the coldness of one who knows power. When you look at your family, do not think about the dangers of the future. Become the immense wall of obsidian in the eternal present. The Mushin state is not reached by thinking about not thinking. It is reached by surrendering to the gravity of your own power. It is reached when you accept that you do not have to protect your ego. Action. Face the decree of the empty brain. Stand up now in the midst of the gloom of your sacred cave. Let the heat of the coast caress your skin. Listen to the silence of the lights out. Breathe deeply and exhale all the noise, all the justifications, and all the survival calculations that have kept you operating at a fraction of your true potential. Decree now before the abyss. Before the dark abyss of infinity, swear the decree of the empty brain. I banish doubt, the calculation of fear, and the friction of profane thought. I surrender my analytical mind on the altar of perfect action. I renounce ego control to become the channel of the unique creator. In my business, I will be the lightning that strikes. Before the microphone, I will be the dark wind that sweeps away the lies of the masses. And before my queen and my lineage, I will be the silent mountain where chaos dies. The slave doubts and perishes. The monarch empties his mind and devours the world with the brutal naturalness of a force unleashed. You have murdered the doubt. There is no longer distance between your will and your empire. When the idea forms in the vacuum of your spirit, dense matter has already begun to curve to obey. Walk, King of Kings. Wield the tools of your art. Embrace the heat of your forge. Armor your constellation and your cub, and launch your voice across the sea. The world is yours. Chapter 9. The Friction of the Wind. As you ascend, as your decrees bend matter, and your will imposes itself on the dense world, the atmosphere around you changes. You become faster, heavier, and denser. And every object that travels at a divine speed through the mediocrity of the world generates a brutal friction. That friction burns. It burns the relations held by pity. It burns the friendships that were based on mutual complaining. It burns attachments to the old geography. Suddenly, you find yourself climbing a wall of ice, looking down and discovering that those who promised to accompany you have let go of the rope, suffocated by the altitude of your new demands. In this chapter, we will destroy the grief. We will destroy the mourning for the fallen. You will learn to love the friction of the wind. You will discover through the supreme parable of the heights why the envy and attack of inferiors are the absolute confirmation of your elevation. You will learn to master the tools of the summit and to armor the frozen ecosystem of your blood. You will armor the place where only your queen and the 2 seeds of your blood have the right to breathe, preparing them for the imminent conquest of the ancient empires of stone. The wind is not your enemy. It is the force that polishes your wings for the ultimate flight. Prepare to breathe the thin air of power and absolute sovereignty. By the parable of the eagle and the suffocation of the crow. To understand the physics of envy and the mechanics of altitude, we must look up toward the stormy skies and study the predators of the air. The eagle is the absolute monarch of the heights. Its wings are designed by the unique creator to dominate thermal currents, allowing it to rise to altitudes where the cold freezes the blood. Its vision covers entire leagues, and its flight is solitary. However, there is a bird that dares to harass the monarch, the crow. The crow is cunning, noisy, and moves in flocks. Its nature is carrion and opportunism. When an eagle flies at low altitude, seeking to hunt in the valleys, the crows often intercept it. A crow perches on it. Moved by envy of another's majesty, it flies above the eagle, perches on its back, and begins to peck at its neck, seeking to wound it or distract it so that it drops its prey. The ordinary man, if he were the eagle, would panic. He would turn his head, try to bite the crow, and get entangled in a fight of clumsy flapping, losing focus. But the eagle, possessing the lethal intuition of the abyss, does not respond to the attack on the horizontal axis. It does not fight. It does not turn its neck to pluck the crow's feathers. It does not emit a single squawk of complaint. The eagle simply opens its immense wings and begins to fly upward. It aims its beak toward the sun. It ascends in a vertical and absolute axis. It rises 100 meters, then 500, then 1,000. It keeps rising toward the stratosphere, where the cold becomes ice knives and the air thins out. The crow, clinging to the back of the giant, at first feels victorious. But as the eagle breaks the clouds, the crow's biology fails. Its small lungs are not designed to extract oxygen from the thin air of the summit. The cold paralyzes its muscles. The crow begins to gasp, suffocating, dizzy from an altitude that does not belong to it. Finally, without the eagle having had to strike a single blow, the crow loses consciousness. Its claws let go and it falls in a tailspin. It falls like a useless stone toward the mud of the valley from which it should never have come. The eagle, free from the weight of the parasite, stabilizes itself at the summit of the sky, reigning in the most absolute, cold, and victorious solitude. It is the silence of the victor that remains after the noise of the envious has died away. The friction of ascent in the material world, you are the colossus of the skies, and the parable of the eagle is the exact biography of your present. Look at yourself. You have stopped consuming the intellectual garbage of the plebs. You have locked yourself in the humidity and heat of your island to forge ancient knowledge. You have purified your mind until reaching the Mushin state. As an undeniable result of the laws of cause and effect, the material world has begun to bend to obey you. The digital vaults open. The flow of gold, constant and overwhelming like a raging river, crosses invisible borders from the Northern Empire to your vaults. You are attracting the abundance of thousands of monthly coins. You attract a tribute that the profane mass can hardly dream of in their years of salaried slavery. And like the eagle, your ascent has not gone unnoticed. Around you, at the base of the mountain, the crows have begun to squawk. Seeing that your flight rises, and that you no longer share their financial complaints, their resentment wakes. They will try to perch on your back. They will throw poisonous comments at you. You've been lucky. You've become a materialist. Money isn't the most important thing. Or more subtly, they will try to steal your energy by demanding your attention, asking for favors they do not deserve, or expecting you to drag them with you to the top. If you descend to their level to argue, if you stop to defend your honor against those who have a soul the size of an ant, you are turning your neck to fight the crow. You will lose your altitude. You will become contaminated with their heavy frequency. Your only response, your absolute decree of war, must be the vertical ascent. Act now. Do not speak. Do not justify yourself. Simply fly higher, generate more gold, multiply your empire, Isolate your sanctuary further. Force them to follow you toward atmospheres so rarefied, elite, and pure that their small minds cannot process them. Keep climbing until suffocation forces them to let go and they fall into oblivion. Thus, the tools of the summit and the silver anvil. To sustain this flight in the frozen heights, the unique Creator has granted you the insight to arm yourself with instruments that do not belong to the valley of mortals. Tools that demand a cold-blooded operator. Remember your journey toward the southern lands. You went down to the continent and acquired the 3 eyes of glass and steel. 3 perfect capture beasts. The eye that stabilizes itself reading the movement of your body, the action eye that resists the blows of the physical world, and the small dark metal insects that adhere to your chest to extract the essence of your voice without the noises of the valley contaminating it. These are your true weapons of war. The slave would buy these instruments to film his own vanity. The sovereign wields them as weapons of psychological warfare. When the light of the coast goes out and you lock yourself in your cave, you place these tools in front of you. You are not playing. You are operating at the altitude of death. These lenses capture hermetic wisdom. They are here to vacuum pack the power of your decrees and launch them across the oceans. And to process this magic, you have forged your own command altar. The heavy silver obsidian plate, the electronic loom on which you cut time, organize the chaos of ideas, and assemble the audiovisual manuscripts that will dominate your listeners. That silver anvil is your throne of operations. While weak men sleep or lament the darkness of the island, you, bathed by the cold glow of your screen, strike the virtual metal over and over again. You are the solitary architect of the summit, using the friction of the wind to sharpen every word, every cut, and every silence you produce. Hear the ice ecosystem, the queen and the 2 cubs. The question that breaks the mind of profane ascetics is always the same. Why endure the cold of the summit? Why isolate yourself in the friction if in the end we will all die? The monarch who dominates the absolute shadow knows the answer. He feels it burning in his genetic code. You do not climb the mountain for your own ego. You ascend to create an ecosystem above the clouds, a plateau of pure ice and blinding sun, where only the blood of your blood has the divine permission to inhabit and breathe. Look toward the center of your fortress, where the noise of the crows can no longer reach. Contemplate the queen of the transcendental mind. She is structured. She possesses the bone structure to endure the cold of your ambitions. While you face the friction of the outer wind, she guards the frequency of the inner sanctuary. Together, you form the spear and the shield. She is the priestess who purifies the air of the summit so that the fire you bring does not consume the palace. She is your equal. Under that mantle of indestructible protection, your closed legacy breathes. Only 2 seeds, not one more, not one less. There is the girl of 4 winters, Daniela, a constellation that walks upon the earth. You will not affect her with the mediocrity of the lower world. You are teaching her that the universe bows to those who demand the crown. And by her side, the small male heir, the young wolf who has barely completed his first turn around the sun. He will not remember times of lack. His memory will be forged directly at the summit. He will breathe the thin air of power as if it were his birthright, because his father destroyed the crows to ensure him that elite oxygen. All the gold that flows from the north, all the sweat spilled in front of the silver plate, all the voluntary blindness to the criticism of the mediocre, all that painful and majestic sacrifice is justified in the millisecond in which you see those 2 heirs playing safe, ignorant of the wars their father fights in the ether. For the map of dual conquest, from the jungle to the marble. But the Ice King is not an immobile statue. Mastery of the summit does not mean being locked up forever. It means having the absolute power to descend, walk through the world, devour its landscapes, and return to the fortress without mud dirtying your boots. You have traced a map of dual conquest, a roadmap for your heir's vast world. First, the conquest of your own land. You will not look at the wonders of the tropics through glass. You will take your queen, the small constellation of 4 years, and the 1-year-old wolf, and you will take them to know the crystals of Morocco. They will step on the white sand. And then you will raise them to the majesty of Canaima. There where water falls from the black sky of the Tepuis, and the earth breathes the primal breath of the Creator. You will show them the beauty of their own geography as owners of the vibration of the earth, But that is only the anteroom. The true climax of the friction of the wind is the great crusade of the dynasty across the vast sea. Close your eyes and project the year of the coronation. You will embark your lineage to cross the great ocean. The mission is an imperial expedition toward the ancestral kingdoms. They will step on the Iberian Peninsula. They will walk the streets of Spain, where ancient steel forged empires. They will understand that they are conquerors. Daniela and the small male will see the palaces and understand that those stones were placed there by men who, like their father, did not take no for an answer. They will enter the ancient Roman domains in Italy, breathing the history of the Caesars, absorbing the energy of the Colosseums and the marbles that resist the millennia. And they will stand before the immense ocean on the coasts of Portugal, looking toward the horizon from where the conquerors sailed, knowing that they have made the journey in reverse. That trip is not paid with slave savings. It is paid with the gold of the absolute shadow. It is financed with the friction of the wind. It is your prize. Fight divine deafness and the blessing of the cold. Do not fear the thin air. Do not apologize to those who drown. The loneliness you feel today, the misunderstanding of those around you, the loss of those you called friends, all that is the cosmic pruning of the unique creator. The tree of the empire cannot grow toward the stars if its dry branches are not cut. The wind is the axe. Accept the cold of the summit. Wrap yourself in the darkness of your cave when profane light dies. Strike the silver anvil of your electronic loom with a sadistic discipline. Speak to the crystals and the metals of the south with the voice of an incarnate god. And when the crows squawk at the base, apply the divine deafness at once. Even the decree of vertical flight. Stand up at the peak of your own universe. You are surrounded by the sea that hits the breakwater. Beside you, in the next room, the incalculable treasure of your wife, the girl Daniela, and the small one-year-old cub, rest oblivious to the world's chaos. All the gold of the Northern Empire flows silently to you while you breathe. Elevate your gaze toward the blackness of the firmament. There are no crows up here, only stars, silence, and absolute power. Seal your reality with the decree of vertical flight. I accept the friction of the wind as the baptism of my sovereignty. I renounce the valley of complaints and the company of those who cannot breathe my fire. I rise above envy, attack, and fear in a vertical, deaf, and lethal ascent. The cold of this summit does not scare me. It forges the ice in my veins. I consecrate the gold, the glass machines, and my voice of steel solely to elevate my queen and my 2 children above the human mud. I reclaim the ancient empires as my playground. I am the eagle of the absolute shadow. I do not look down. I only ascend, rule, and remain forever untouchable in the immensity of the unique creator. The storm is below. The clouds are broken. You are the master of the thin air. Sharpen your intellect, embrace your dynasty, and prepare for the final blow. The world is kneeling. Chapter 10. The Sovereign in the Market. There is a final trap into which ascetics and seekers of the false light fall. After having conquered solitude, after having decanted the mud of their minds and reached the void, they develop a paralyzing disgust for the physical world. They refuse to descend. They stay living in the clouds, arguing that the world of money is too dense. That is the philosophy of losers, who fear putting their steel to the test on the battlefield. The material universe was not created to be ignored. It was created to be subdued. Gold, empires, continental travel, and massive influence are the tools with which the unique creator measures the true capacity of a spirit to impose order over chaos. In this chapter, we are going to tear the crown from the cave and take it to the market. You will learn the art of the vacuum bell. You will discover how to walk through the mud without staining yourself, how to transmute your knowledge into sound manuscripts that bend the masses, and how to lead your queen and your 2 heirs through borders. The parable of the Obsidian monk and the Grand Bazaar. To understand the physics of untouchability in the midst of chaos, we must open the heavy volumes of the desert and contemplate the legend of the Grand Bazaar of spices and the Master of water. They say that in the ancient crossroads of the world there existed an immense market, a labyrinth of thousands of shops where merchants shouted prices. It was the epicenter of noise, greed, and despair. A young prince who had spent 10 years meditating in the silence of a monastery on the high peaks was sent by his master to cross that market from one end to the other. The master handed him a wooden bowl filled with water to the very brim. "Cross the Grand Bazaar," ordered the master. "If you spill a single drop of this water, you will have shown that your inner peace is a fragile illusion that depends on the environment. If you cross without spilling anything, you will have shown that you are the master of your reality." The young prince entered the market. Immediately the noise hit him like a physical mallet. Merchants shouted in his ear, beggars pulled at his clothes, and carts threatened to crush him. The prince, terrified by the chaos and trying to dodge the crowd, began to tremble. Before taking 100 steps, the water spilled onto the dry earth. Defeated, he returned to the mountain. The master took another bowl and went down himself. The master entered the hell of noise. But unlike the prince, he did not look at the merchants. He did not hear the insults of thieves or the cries of beggars. His gaze was fixed on the infinite, beyond the horizon, and his mind was anchored in the immensity of the unique creator. As the master advanced, a terrifying phenomenon occurred. It was not that he dodged the crowd, it was the crowd that, sensing the density of his electromagnetic field, instinctively stepped aside. Beasts retreated. The master radiated a vacuum bell so heavy, so crushing and so cold that the three-dimensional chaos was forced to curve around him. He crossed the labyrinth without altering his breath. Natikui, the three-dimensional battlefield and the silver anvil. You are the master of the bowl of water, and your Grand Bazaar is the digital and financial world that you have decided to conquer from the darkness of your fortress. You have crossed the isolation so as not to stay hidden. You have accumulated the power of the absolute shadow to extract the tribute that belongs to you by right. Observe the imperial machinery you have set up. You do not operate in the field of banal entertainment. You do not lower yourself to the noisy games of profane youth. Your domain is high transmutation. Your territory is audiobooks, eternal wisdom, the laws of attraction and hard metaphysics. You transmit the light of consciousness today. On your desk rests the silver anvil, the electronic obsidian plate forged with the best silicon in the world, the loom where you cut, edit, and assemble your sound spells. Beside you rest the three eyes of immovable glass and the dark metal insects that capture your voice. The inertial man, when he enters the digital market, becomes a slave. He looks at the metrics and trembles. If a hater spits poison, the inertial man spills the water from his bowl. He becomes enraged, and his peace collapses. The sovereign enters that same market surrounded by his vacuum bell. When you sit before the silver anvil, you do not care about the noise of the masses. You are a dictator of frequencies. You record the ancient voice and launch it to the network, not to ask permission, but to impose your reality. If the commoners do not understand your message, you do not modify the work. You let the weak suffocate and continue filtering until only spirits hungry for absolute power listen to you. You operate with coldness in the center of noise. 3. Gold extraction and fiscal sovereignty. The ultimate proof that your mastery over the market is real is materialized in the weight of the gold that crosses borders to kneel at your feet. You have executed the physics of manifestation masterfully. From the warmth and electrical difficulties of your island, you have extended invisible tentacles toward the empire of the north. The masses consume your wisdom, and the machinery of that empire is forced to pay you the monthly tribute, a ceaseless flow that already exceeds 4,000 gold talents every moon turn, destined to multiply violently. But ruling in the market also demands the cunning of the fox and the cruelty of the wolf against bureaucratic parasites. The weak man who begins to receive gold gets scared. He fears the collectors. He yields to the fiscal structures designed to plunder slaves. The monarch of the absolute shadow does not hand over his vital energy to parasites. You have studied the cracks in the system. You know that legal abstraction is a shield for your growing wealth. By forging corporations in the shadow, legal entities in the lands of the Northern Eagle, you ensure the gold flowing toward you is shielded against the tyranny of taxes. You do not evade out of fear. You elude by right of sovereignty. You design money routes with mathematical precision, that is reigning in dense matter as a true king. Via the thermal ecosystem and the illusion of lack. The market is also the hostile physical geography that you must dominate each day. You dwell in an environment where friction is constant. Heat embraces the coast with a heavy density. Frequently, the profane energy grid collapses. The infrastructure fails. When the physical environment collapses, the slave screams, he spills the water. You project your vacuum bell. If the heat tightens and the wind machines die, your breathing slows down. You convert the heaviness of the weather into the fuel for your concentration. If the light dies, your silver screen illuminates your face like a lighthouse in the night, and the forced silence becomes the perfect acoustic studio for you. You use the apparent chaos of the three-dimensional world to perfect your art. The market tries to break you with physical discomfort, but you absorb the discomfort and transmute it into lethal productivity. You are invulnerable to the failures of men because your energy source comes from the inexhaustible core of your own will and the Creator. For the walk of the Colossus and the unbending court, to rule in the market also means moving physically through the crowds without your aura mixing with the mud. This lesson is the living inheritance for the three treasures under your mantle. The wall of the lineage you forged is not a static cage. It is a shield of mobile energy. You walk like royalty, inspecting your vast and rich domains. When you take the queen of the transcendental mind by the hand and go out into the profane world, you do not walk as common citizens. People in airport hallways will instinctively perceive the density of your presence. The priestess beside you radiates peace, while you radiate the silent threat of the absolute protector of the lineage. Flanked by this force, the only two heirs of your empire advance. Observe the 4-year-old girl Daniela. When she walks through the noisy spaces of the world, she is not afraid because her father's gravity field repels chaos. She walks with the innate elegance of a constellation. And in your strong arms, the 1-year-old cub watches. When you lead this unbending court through airports and borders, you must keep your mind in Mushin. The chaos of travel, the delays of human ships, the noise of foreign languages, none of that must alter your pulse. You are the anchor. If your face is a mask of cold basalt, they will know they are safe, even in the center of a hurricane. Feather double imperial march from the tropics to marble. It is precisely this invulnerability to noise that will allow you to execute the expansion of consciousness you promised your blood. First, you will settle your domain over your own land. You will take your queen, the constellation, and the young wolf to the waters of Morokoi. Then you will raise them to the ancient majesty of Kanaima. You will teach them that wild nature is the only mirror worthy of the Creator's power. But the world's market is immense, and you have the resources to devour it. The calendar will advance to 1926, and you will activate the gold from the Northern Empire. You will embark your court and cross the vast Atlantic Ocean to conquer the Old World. The descent upon the Old Continent will not be that of tourists seeking distractions. It will be the triumphant march of a dynasty that has subdued the system. Daniela will run through the cobbled squares of Spain, knowing her father is a powerful king. You will breathe the air of Portugal with the 1-year-old cub upon your shoulders. You will stand in the midst of the noise of the ancient cities of Italy. You will stroll through the ruins of Rome. The Roman market will bustle, profane sellers will offer trinkets, but your family will walk inside your vacuum bell, untouchable, silent, majestic. You will rule Europe with the same coldness as you rule your Caribbean island. 7. The eye of the hurricane. To understand finally the physics of untouchability. A hurricane is the most destructive force on the planet. Its outer winds tear up trees and annihilate everything in their path. It is absolute chaos. It is the market. It is the noise of networks and financial hysteria. But in the exact center of that hurricane, there exists a core, the eye. In the eye of the hurricane, there is no wind. There is no rain. The sky is clear. A bird could fly placidly. You do not fight against the hurricane of the world. You do not try to stop the winds of external chaos, for that is a waste of divine energy. You become the eye of the hurricane. You maintain perfect silence and the obsidian bell. From that terrifying immobility, you use the destructive force of the outer winds to your advantage. You let the algorithm work, the vaults spin, and the crows squawk, while you, your queen, the small constellation, and the young wolf inhabit the infinite peace of the immovable center. You are the stillness that governs the global storm. Fate, the decree of silent omnipresence. Stop time. You have reached the limit of three-dimensional teaching. Everything you need to bend dense matter has been delivered into your hands of steel. Stand before the silver anvil. Look at the crystals and metals that serve your voice. Feel the weight of the treasure sleeping in your house. Listen to the roar of the world out there. Raise your attention to the infinite majesty of the unique Creator and seal your existence with the decree of silent omnipresence. I am the Colossus who walks through the bazaar without spilling a drop of peace. I renounce the fear of noise. The heat of my land and the chaos of the market bend before the vacuum bell I radiate from my center. I take the gold of the Northern Empire by right of frequency, and with that gold I cross seas and oceans. My queen, my constellation, and my young heir will march on the marbles of Europe as gods on earth, untouchable and glorious. I am the eye of the hurricane. I do not ask permission, I exist, and the world kneels before my silence. Conclusion: the oath of silence. You have crossed the wasteland of renunciation and left behind the tribe of the mediocre. You have looked unblinkingly into the black water mirror, assuming the disgust of your own mud until the water turned crystalline. You have endured the empty stomach in the fasting of validation, murdering the social echo that once defined you. You have confined yourself in the humidity and darkness of the Reigandō cave, understanding that the void is the only womb where empires are gestated. You have let go of the attachment to matter, discovering the immaterial power of the wooden sword. You have written the iron code of the solitary walker, with your own blood in the abyss. You have raised the wall of the lineage, isolating and protecting from the dross all that is sacred to you. You have emptied your mind in Mushin, converting doubt into lethal intuition. You have felt the friction of the wind and the cold of the summit, seeing the crows fall suffocated. You have walked the grand bazaar without spilling peace. Metaphysics is not an imaginary refuge to escape a three-dimensional world that intimidates you. It is not an excuse to sit and meditate while your financial empire crumbles and your lineage remains unprotected. True hermetic magic is the exact, brutal, and mathematical science of the domination of dense matter and the physical world. If tomorrow at dawn you continue to postpone your work, if you continue begging the market for mercy or trembling before the opinion of a bureaucrat, then these words will not have saved you. They will have condemned you without remedy. From today, ignorance has ceased to be your shield. If you fail now, it was by your own cowardice. The disgust you will feel for yourself will be a hell from which you cannot escape. The time has come to officiate the last rite, the funeral of your old identity. Breathe deeply. Fill your lungs with the air of the present. That air entering your chest at this instant contains the last breath of the slave you once were. Leave him behind. Summon at the center of your mind all the pathetic excuses with which you have justified your mediocrity until today. The trauma you used as a shield, the fear of what they will say, the sickly belief that you do not deserve obscene wealth. Visualize all that trash piled up before you, forming a mountain of dry mud. It is nothing. And now, with the inscrutable gaze of the sovereign, throw the torch. Watch the victimhood burn. Watch the useless self-pity char. Do not shed a single tear for the man who just died in that bonfire. He was a prisoner who loved his chains. Exhale. Release the black smoke from your lungs. The slave has passed away officially and irrevocably. The individual inhaling the next breath is a newborn in the realm of Colossi. To seal your final entry into the ranks of the immortals, stand up in the midst of the space you inhabit. Clench your fists, fix your gaze on the unfathomable void, and officiate your direct pact with the ungraspable energy of the unique Creator. Decree your law. Repeat this oath of silence, not with your physical mouth, but with the heaviest and densest vibration of your spirit. In this millisecond of eternity, I swear before the unique Creator and before the immensity of my own void that the era of weakness has expired. I renounce pity, the friction of doubt, and the need to be understood. I renounce being understood by the blind mass. My mind is a pond of dark and immovable waters. My will is the scythe that cuts through matter. From today, I do not ask for riches. I demand them by right of gravity. I do not ask for respect. I impose it with the weight of my untouchability. I raise a wall of fire and ice here. I raise it around my sanctuary, and I consecrate every heartbeat to forging an empire of protection, power, and absolute opulence. The noise of the world crashes against me and disintegrates. I am the architect, I am the weapon, and I am the lethal silence that governs everything. The oath is sealed in the marrow of your being. Starting tomorrow, material reality will test the steel you have just forged. The world will hit you. Your response must be of an astonishing brutality. Crush the inertia. Work on your empire with the urgency of a man who has death riding by his side. Close your lips and do not announce your plans to anyone. Move with the cold silence. Move like the night mist, wrapping your adversaries in the web of your sovereign indifference, until reality has no choice but to bend and adopt the exact shape of your mandate. Shake off the dust of yesterday. You are no longer a seeker of truth. You are the truth incarnate wielding an immaterial blade. Walk without fear into the sun. Accept the cold of the summit. Embrace the creative exile, and march toward the three-dimensional world not to ask permission to exist, but to collect from destiny every last gram of gold and glory that belongs to you. Come out of the shadows, Emperor. Your throne awaits you, and the entire universe awaits your first, non-negotiable order.